Okay. Committee on State Affairs will come to order. Welcome back. The chair now lays out as a matter of pending business Senate Bill 30. Senate Bill 30, as we previously heard earlier today, Senator Schwartner sent up a committee substitute and explained that to the membership. Senator Schwartner sends up that committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, substitute's adopted. The chair recognizes Senator Schwartner on the committee substitute that is now before us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I would just want to reiterate my great appreciation for the input I've received from the members of this committee and across the entire body and from the stakeholders, and look forward to moving this bill and continuing to collaborate with my fellow senators and potentially some floor amendments that would address some continued concerns. So that's all I wanted to say. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Schwartner. Senator Schwartner moves that we've already adopted the substitute. Senator Schwartner moves that Senate Bill 30, as substituted, be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Senate Bill 30, will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry,
Aye.
Schwartner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. There being 6 ayes and 1 nay, Senate Bill 30, as substituted, will be reported favorably to the full Senate.
Are you going to do while we're here? Yeah, while we're here.
Okay, so 1, 2. Hey, Charles?
You're talking about 801?
801. 801. We'll do 801. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business Senate Bill 801. That's the bill Senator Menendez presented to us last week about birth records and helping folks get out of homelessness. Senate Bill 801. Senator Zaffarini moves that Senate Bill 801 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. 801. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt,
Aye.
Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry,
Aye.
Schwartner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. There being 8 ayes and 1 nay, Senate Bill 801 will be reported favorably to the full Senate.
Hey, we're done, man.
Did I miss?
And for me too. Yeah.
Yes, right. We need 2 motions in writing from Senator Betancourt.
Come to your spot to get that one out of the way.
You can. Yeah, how about, Mr. Chairman, how about if we use a unanimous consent for both Senator Middleton and Senator Bencourt to be voting aye on Committee Substitute Senate Bill 30? Can? Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah, that's fine. So there'll be a motion in writing, and so Senator Paxton, Senator Betancourt, Senator Middleton was our ayes on Senate Bill 30 without objection. Very well. The chair lays out Senate Bill 2595, and recognizes its author, our colleague Senator Middleton, to explain the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Senate Bill 2595 creates a new criminal offense in the Texas Penal Code for harassing, intimidating, or threatening another person while concealing one's identity with a mask or similar headgear. This legislation is not about banning costumes or punishing peaceful protests. It's about ending intimidation and protecting public order and preventing the use of anonymity as a weapon. In recent protests, particularly in the wake of Hamas's attack on Israel, masked agitators have swarmed college campuses and city centers, blocking infrastructure, damaging property, and targeting Jewish Americans for harassment. The Anti-Defamation League has documented a 360% increase in anti-Semitic incidents in just the last year alone. In Houston, and as we saw at UT and other cities, demonstrators have used facial coverings to threaten, disrupt, and evade law enforcement. And yet in Texas, there is currently no specific penalty for using a mask to commit these acts of harassment or intimidation. Senate Bill 2595 fills that gap. It makes it a Class B misdemeanor to harass, intimidate, or threaten another person in a public space while wearing a mask to conceal identity. Importantly, the bill provides broad exemptions for headgear and other masks when the use is primarily for costumes like Halloween, religious garb, occupational safety, health precautions, weather protections, theatrical performances, and emergencies. These affirmative defenses ensure the bill is narrowly drawn and constitutionally sound.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any questions for the author on Senate Bill 2595? So we're going to leave that bill before us.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hughes on Senate Bill 2876. Senator, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Middleton's bill and this one are in the same general subject matter, so we'll lay this one out along with it. Senate Bill 2876, again, Senator Middleton covered the issues very well. The use of face coverings during incidents of disorderly conduct has become increasingly common. In D.C. last June, protesters, many of them masked, gathered at Lafayette Square where they vandalized statues and set off a smoke bomb. Face coverings present a major obstacle to law enforcement, making it difficult to identify suspects in large crowds. As a result, many cases are dismissed due to insufficient evidence. During interim hearings, we were tasked with studying the use of face coverings by those seeking to conceal their identity while committing crimes during protests. Expert witnesses and law enforcement testified that face coverings not only hinder identification, but often embolden folks to engage in criminal behavior. In many cases, protesters wear masks with the specific intent to cause harm and chaos while avoiding accountability. We want to balance those concerns against those who have health concerns and others that may require them to be masked. So Senate Bill 2876 increases the penalty for rioting from a Class B misdemeanor to a Class A misdemeanor if, during trial, it's shown the defendant wore a face covering with the intent to conceal their identity. Again, just like Senator Middleton's bill, we want to address this conduct while respecting rights of those folks who need to wear masks for other reasons. And so that's what the bill does, and I'll yield for questions.
Thank you, Senator. Chair opens up public testimony on Senate Bill 2876.
Thank you, Senator. And we also open up public testimony on Senate Bill 2595. So both of these bills are now before the committee. We'll have some witnesses on one or the other or on both.
Chair opens up public, yes, 2595.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we'll begin testimony on both bills, Senate Bill 2595 and Senate Bill 2876. And the chair calls Jackie Nierenberg, Cole Glosser, Autumn Lawner, Amy White, Kristen Budwine, Courtney Toretto, Stephen Deline, Lindsay Blackwell, Samiha Rizvi, Jennifer Margulies, Arshia Papari, Chris Harris. And I've called every witness who we have registered to testify on for or against the bill so far. Help yourself. Either one of these seats on the end, you're welcome to. Almost, hold tight, almost there. Oh, I'm here.
Oh, sorry, it's always a little tricky. Okay, fantastic. Honorable Chair Hughes and members of the committee, thank you so much.
Let me see. So go ahead and introduce. No, that's fine. That's fine. We're almost there.
Yes.
All right, let's begin. We'll go ahead and start over here and work our way across. So my left, your right, welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Okay, so me first? Okay. Hello, committee members. Hello, Chairman. My name is Samiha Rizvi, and I'm here on behalf of the Council on American Islamic Relations, Texas, to testify in opposition to SB 2876. This bill raises serious civil liberties concerns. It expands criminal penalties in a way that could target peaceful protesters, especially those who wear face coverings for religious, medical, or cultural reasons. Under current Texas law, Texas defines a riot as an assemblage of just 7 or more people whose conduct might disturb others. That means a peaceful protest could be retroactively labeled a riot, especially if a few individuals escalate. SB 2876 would then make it a Class A misdemeanor to wear a mask in that context, not based on what someone did, but based on what police believe their intent was. So, I ask you all, how will officers determine intent to conceal identity, and what protections will be in place to prevent profiling or selective enforcement? As of now, with the current language, this bill appears to be not about safety, but rather intimidation. And we strongly believe that it will chill free speech and deter Texans from exercising their First Amendment rights. I urge you all to oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rizvi. I want to make sure we have the records correct. We show you as against Senate Bill 2595 and against Senate Bill 2876. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Just making sure. Welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead and get as close to the mic as you can, please.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am. You're fine. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senate Committee. I am Lindsay Carmichael Blackwell. I am here today as a two-time member of Team USA, a Paralympic medalist, just like the ones you were cheering on at the 2024 Paris Games half a year ago. People call me an inspiration all the time, but it's hard to feel inspirational when anti-mask legislation sends a clear message that I am not welcome in public spaces, that disabled, chronically ill, and high-risk Texans like me are not welcome to exercise our constitutional rights like freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Anti-mask legislation would take away my freedom to protect my health. Whether that's protecting myself from highly contagious diseases like measles or COVID, or from smoke inhalation from wildfires, or from fears of being unfairly targeted by law enforcement, my disability might be visible, but millions of Texans have health conditions that aren't obvious at a glance. Officers cannot be made arbiters of whether a citizen is medically justified in their right to protect their own health. I'm a seventh-generation Texan. I'm proud that Texas sent the third largest U.S. contingent of Paralympians in the most recent games. Many of my fellow athletes and disabled Texans have compromised immune systems and complex health problems that we work hard to manage. We want to protect ourselves and be part of the story of the Lone Star State, but we cannot participate. We cannot make our voices heard if we have to risk our health, our careers, our lives because of anti-mask legislation. That is no choice at all. It feels like a door closing in my face. It feels like when I was a kid being left behind and left out of inaccessible places all over again. So if you believe my life as a Texan has meaning, if you have ever been inspired by a person like me, please let me inspire you today to oppose SB 2529 and SB 2876 and keep Texas accessible and welcoming of our most vulnerable citizens. Thank you for hearing my testimony.
And thank you for your testimony. Welcome back. Introduce yourself,
Yes.
Give us your testimony.
Thanks so much, Chair Hughes and members of the committee. Thanks so much for the opportunity to testify today. Hello, my name is Cole Glosser, and I'm a policy fellow with the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities, or CTD, an organization advocating for people with disabilities to live freely and thrive in the community of their choice. And I am testifying on both SB 2876 and 2595. And I want to discuss how a proposed mask ban would affect the disabled community. There are thousands of disabled Texans and family members who need a mask due to chronic illness or being immunocompromised in order to protect their health. Since 2020, masking has become an incredibly important tool for those who are immunocompromised to protect their health in public settings, and it's crucial that they're able to continue to do so and into the future. And while we very much appreciate that Senator Middleton's bill clearly leaves out the health provision defense within SB 2595, we're also strongly urging that 2876 includes a health provision as well. But also, and just the general idea is that we need to make sure that we are not stigmatizing some Texas, the most vulnerable population that needs to mask in order to maintain their safety in public life. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Since you're on the end of the table, you got to get real close to the microphone and introduce yourself and go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chairman Hughes and the committee. My name is Jennifer Margulies. I am speaking today opposed to both bills as a parent and as a politically engaged Texan. Those are two things that are really important to me. I live with people who are immune compromised and who have chronic health issues. And in order for me to stay engaged the way that I like to stay engaged, whether that's coming up here to the Capitol where you may have seen me walking around with this mask, or whether it is going to political protests or gatherings, I'm masked to protect my family members. And I'm very concerned about the way that these bills would make it really difficult to do that and would mean that part of my risk assessment in going out in public would be, can I go any place where someone might do something at a protest where you have a small minority of people who might behave in a way that is afterwards going to be qualified as something that was a riot or people who were doing harassment when the vast majority of us there are engaged in peaceful protest and speech? and there's a recording, here I am, I was there, I'm wearing this mask as I do in public, and suddenly I'm not available to take care of my kid because I've been charged with a crime. So I'm very concerned about the overreach that we could see happening as a result of this bill. And I think if people are committing crimes at a protest or in any other situation in public, they should be held accountable for those crimes and not for what they were wearing, not for a mask. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Get close to that microphone, introduce yourself, and go ahead.
Hello, my name is Kirsten Budwine. I'm a policy attorney with the Texas Civil Rights Project here in opposition to SB 2876. As the bill analysis states, protesters are typically charged under the riot statute. Imposing a mask ban, especially in the context of exercising the right to protest, is likely to impede on Texans' right to anonymously protest. The U.S. Supreme Court has affirmed the right to anonymous political expression and association in several cases. In one of those cases, McIntyre v. Ohio Elections Commission, the court highlights the importance of preserving the right, stating, quote, "Anonymity is a shield from the tyranny of the majority. It thus exemplifies the purpose behind the First Amendment, in particular to protect unpopular individuals from retaliation and their ideas from suppression at the hand of an intolerant society." The court's rationale in these cases still hold true today. In this day and age where doxing is at an all-time high, people are receiving death threats, experiencing harassment, being terminated from their jobs, and even being deported for their political beliefs, it is imperative that protesters are free to protect themselves from retaliation. U.S. district courts have also recognized mask wearing during demonstrations as a symbolic speech protected by the First Amendment. In Arian v. Mackey, student organizers sued Texas Tech University after the university agreed to grant them a permit to hold a peaceful demonstration only if the student organizers agreed to wear masks. Texas Tech argued that anonymity via mask could encourage demonstrators to engage in violent activity. The district court sided with the students, holding that masks serve a communicative purpose and were therefore protected under the First Amendment as a right to freedom of expression. The right to anonymous protest is well established under law. TCRP is deeply opposed to this bill that will undermine Texans' constitutional rights and further expose protesters to retaliation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Budwine, for your testimony. Senators, any questions for any of our witnesses on this panel? We thank each one of you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. The chair calls Amy White, Autumn Lawner, Jackie Nierenberg, Courtney Toretto, Stephen DeLine, Arshia Papari, Chris Harris. And those are the only witnesses who have expressed a desire to testify on, for, or against the bill by registering. So I'll call your name, please come on down, and then we'll be doing last call after this panel. Or we'll start over here on my left, your right, and so on the end of the table, make sure and get close to that microphone so we can hear you. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Hello, my name is Autumn Lawner. I'm an autistic adult living in Houston, and I'm here to oppose both SB 2595 as well as SB 2876. While I don't personally wear a mask every day outside of public transit, many autistic people do because we're significantly more likely to have asthma, autoimmune disorders, and other conditions that compromise the immune system. For those individuals, masking in public is a medical necessity. Although this bill focuses on masks, it's written broadly enough to include other face coverings. That could potentially extend to sunglasses or even the tinted glasses I wear for light sensitivity. This is something that's deeply concerning. SB 2595 criminalizes people for concealing their identity while engaging in behavior that someone perceives as intimidating or harassing. These are vague, highly subjective terms that open the door for misinterpretation. Autistic people often move, speak, or react in ways that others don't understand. We are statistically 7 times more likely to have encounters with police, and those encounters are more likely to escalate due to miscommunication, often leading to unnecessary use of force or detention. This is especially true for Black and brown autistic people. Likewise, whenever I attend protests, I wear ear defenders because it's loud. I wear these tinted glasses or sunglasses because it's bright, and often I do wear a mask. Not for anonymity, but because the smells, the wind, the hair brushing against my face can be overwhelming. These are basic disability accommodations, sensory aids that allow me to be present, to participate, and to exercise my rights without harm. Under SB 2876, each of these could fall under a mask or other headgear used to conceal identity. As other people have already talked about, riot in Texas can be very broad. It's a very low bar. And SB 2876 doesn't just raise the penalty for participating in what is deemed a riot, it raises it specifically for people who wear masks or other headgear in ways that might be interpreted as concealing their identity. These bills punish perception. They give law enforcement broad authority to assume intent based on how someone looks, not what they've done. For disabled people, especially autistic folks or those with chronic illness, this is terrifying. We already live under constant misinterpretation and unequal scrutiny by law enforcement. I'm not saying it's okay to riot, but how is it fair that someone like me could face harsher punishment than others simply because I need accommodations to exist safely in public? I urge you to vote no on both of these bills, protecting the rights and freedoms of all Texans to access their community safety.
And thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Hughes, members of the committee. My name is Jackie Nierenberg, and I am the Regional Director for the Anti-Defamation League, also known as ADL, for the Austin region, which covers Central Texas. I'm here today in support of Senate Bill 2595 and the critical need to protect our communities from mass intimidation and harassment. As you may know, ADL is a leading anti-hate organization founded in 1913 with a mission to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment to all. Today, we persist in tackling all forms of anti-Semitism and bias, leveraging innovation and partnerships to drive effective change. ADL works vigilantly to protect democracy and foster a just and inclusive society for everyone, is known as a global leader in fighting anti-Semitism, exposing extremism, delivering anti-bias education, and fighting the spread of hate in our communities and online. Starting over 100 years ago, anti-masking laws were on the books in most states across the country, including here in Texas. Texas's law was enacted in 1925, and for a reason, to protect communities from mass intimidation by the KKK. ADL's work on this issue is longstanding. In the late 1940s, ADL published a pamphlet entitled How to Stop Violence Intimidation in Your Community. It included model language for state statutes and local ordinances aimed at preventing members of the KKK from engaging in tactics of harassment and intimidation while concealing their identities behind hoods and masks. ADL's efforts led to the passage of the anti-Klan legislation, including anti-mask and anti-cross burning laws in 6 additional southern states and 50 communities. This legislation helped to end the KKK's reign of terror, as they could no longer intimidate and threaten Black, Jewish, and Catholic communities using hoods and masks to hide who they were. Although Texas repealed its anti-mask law in 1974, we are unfortunately seeing a resurgence in masked harassment and intimidation. Individuals across Texas are wearing masks and face coverings to hide their identities, to harass, intimidate, and target others with impunity, all while evading accountability. ADL supports Senate Bill 2595, which only criminalizes intentional masked harassment and intimidation. The law should only be applicable to individuals who conceal their identities and intentionally place others in reasonable fear of physical harm. We urge the Texas State Affairs Committee to favorably vote SB 2595 out of committee. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Hi, my name is Courtney Toretto. Thank you, Chair Hughes, Vice Chair Paxton, and members of the committee. My name is Courtney Toretto, and I'm the Director of Policy for the Central Division of the ADL, which covers 16 states, including Texas. I'm here today in support of SB 2595 and the critical need to protect our communities from mass intimidation and harassment. As my colleague mentioned, historians directly credit ADL's efforts to unmask hate with helping to slow the growth of the KKK in the second half of the 20th century. Currently, over 20 states, the federal government, and numerous localities have such laws on the books. However, many laws are outdated and/or constitutionally vulnerable due to evolution in case law. Unfortunately, we are once again seeing a resurgence in mass harassment, with individuals across the political spectrum engaging in harassment and intimidation while wearing masks to conceal their identity and to place others in fear of physical harm. This is an important moment to revisit anti-masking laws to ensure that they are comprehensive, appropriately tailored, and constitutionally sound. It is also crucial to restore and strengthen these measures to protect our vulnerable and marginalized communities while allowing exceptions for health considerations and religious expression. We all agree on the importance of the right to protest. Anti-masking laws can and must be narrowly tailored to preserve freedom of speech and assembly. However, the exercise of free speech and assembly must not infringe upon the rights and safety of others. Similarly, we all agree that individuals should be able to mask for health and safety reasons. SB 2595 will not interfere with that right, nor the right of individuals to wear religious garb. But individuals and groups who engage in harassment and intimidation, fueled by bias and hate, must not be able to hide behind masks to avoid consequences for their conduct. It is also notable that many neo-Nazis and other white supremacists often use masks and head coverings to obscure their identities while terrorizing and intimidating communities across the country. Some other types of extremists may also use head coverings while engaging in civil disorder in order to avoid identification by law enforcement. The tactics of the Ku Klux Klan, which symbolize some of the darkest chapters in American history, must no longer be tolerated. ADL supports SB 2595 and urges the Texas Senate State Affairs Committee to favorably vote it out of committee. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator, is there any questions for any of our witnesses on this panel? Dean Zaffarini, you're recognized.
Thank you. To the two witnesses who are supporting the bill, I assume you've read the bill?
Yes.
And I assume that you listened to the testimony of the people who registered against it?
I caught some of it, sorry, I was driving in with my daughter over there.
Is there a way that you could suggest we amend the bill in order to meet your needs and also address the concerns of those who testified against the bill?
So when you look at the content of the bill, it actually does offer carve-outs. So this is a policy that ADL is supporting across the nation, but very specifically narrowly tailored, including carve-outs for health and safety, for religious wear, for costumes, for basically anything we could think of that required you, that had you covering your face, that didn't include concealing it to harass, intimidate, or threaten. We tried to carve out for it, and that's what you see reflected in this bill. So it actually does cover a lot of those bases of the concerns. ADL supports the right for protest. We support the right of free speech. This bill doesn't infringe on that. It's only when you cross that line into intimidation, harassment, and threatening people's physical safety, that's when this bill would come into play.
And yet the people who testified against the bill remain concerned about the content and don't agree with your interpretation. So let me ask the person who testified, who registered against the bill, do you believe that this bill addresses your concerns as it is, or do you have suggested amendments?
So the biggest problem that I'm seeing from my particular perspective is the engagement with law enforcement as far as the additional attention brought from masks, especially looking at engagement with autistic people. That's one where whenever people with certain disabilities have that attention brought to them, just engaging with law enforcement involves further issues as far as communication problems, behavioral differences, things of that nature that can escalate those problems and lead to a lot of difficulty. So it's just the facet of taking medical masks, taking anything like that and saying you're not wearing that is inherently suspect. Wearing any sort of face covering, wearing any sort of sunglasses and a hat is inherently suspect. That's where the problem really comes from, especially when you start getting into communication differences or start getting into different behaviors that can draw that attention or that people might interpret as threatening. Even looking at the protest one, or sorry, the riot one, that's one where as people attend those, if a protest turns into a riot and I'm there wearing a mask just because smells, the sound, everything, I'll usually wear ear defenders as well when I go to protests. And it's that facet of, at that point, there's not anything in that bill to differentiate between the person who's there wearing those things because they're a required disability accommodation and the person who's there that may be trying to do something insidious. And that's really the difficult piece for me.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you, Dean. Any other questions for these witnesses? We thank each of you for being here. You're excused.
Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else present wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 2595? Anyone else present wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 2876? Public testimony on Senate Bill 2595 is closed. Bill will be left pending.
Chair closes public testimony on Senate Bill 2876 and leaves the bill pending.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The chair now lays out Senate Bill 2753, and recognizes its author, Senator Hall, to explain the measure.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. The Texas Election Code has been pieced together with changes over time designed to accommodate conveniences like ballot styles, method of voting, and different voting periods. However, these changes were made without meaningful consideration of their impact on election security. What began as a single-day event involving paper and pencil has now evolved into an extended process that includes early voting, voting by mail, and in-person voting, all with different processes and procedures and equipment. Each voting method has a unique set of processes and procedures that emphasize convenience without consideration of the impact of security. But over time, our quest for convenience in the voting process has caused a less secure election system, which in turn has caused people to lose trust in our election process. Currently, we have no way to determine the actual vote for the early voting period. In some counties, that can be as much as 70% of the total vote. Part of the solution is to restore election confidence, to simplify the process by instituting a single uninterrupted voting period governed by common procedures and allowing the use of a single set of equipment, much like what 21 other states are doing. And Mr. Chairman, I do have a committee substitute.
The chair sends up the committee substitute, and Senator Hall is recognized to explain the differences.
Okay. As I begin, let me make it perfectly clear. This committee substitute does not eliminate countywide voting or electronic poll books, nor does it change in mail-in voting. It would simply do three primary things. Establish a single period that would merge what is currently known as early voting and election day voting into a continuous single in-person voting period with no gap in days in between. This would allow for the voting period to have the zero tapes run just before the polls open on the first day of voting, and then the results tapes run immediately after the polls close on election day, thereby securing the vote at the polling location without having to wait 3 or 4 days. It would allow for combining of precincts up to 10,000 voters per location and require that electronic ballots voted in early voting period be automatically tabulated with election day. The average voter will not be aware that most of these changes have been occurred. The process will basically be totally transparent to them. But the changes have the potential to make the life of election workers much easier. We have worked closely with the Secretary of State's office and stakeholders and have addressed their concerns in the following ways. There will continue to be exactly the same total number of voting days as we currently have. Countywide voting will continue to be available for convenience for any county that wants to use it. The same equipment will be used from the beginning of the early voting until the end of Election Day. That means there is no rush to replace the early voting machines with new machines or secure early voting machines for future tabulation. The county has the option to set up as many polling locations as needed by combining precincts up to 10,000 voters. That is up to. They get the choice below that. Locations do not all have to be open. Locations throughout the early voting period, but once a location is open, it does have to stay open through Election Day. As we all know, the current voting process does not protect your right to ballot to secrecy, and the current adopted policies of redaction is not the fix. The good news is this process will also protect our constitutional rights to ballot secrecy. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to take any questions.
And thank you, Senator Hall. Members, any questions for Senator Hall on 2753?
What do we have? How many do we have? Let's ask the resource.
We'll open testimony on Senate Bill 2753, and the chair calls Christina Adkins from the Secretary of State's office. And after Ms. Atkins, we'll begin calling those who've registered wishing to testify in public testimony. Ms. Atkins, welcome back. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you represent.
Yes, my name is Christina Adkins, and I'm the Director of Elections for the Texas Secretary of State's office.
Thank you. Senator Hall.
I know you've looked at the bill very closely.
Yes, sir.
And we've had a number of issues that we've been working on for quite a while, particularly ballot secrecy.
Yes, sir.
And this approach where counties will be able to determine the size of their polling locations so that they can adopt either countywide voting or election day or precinct voting, because the votes will be reported by polling location. What are your thoughts on that concept?
Yes, sir. As we've discussed a number of times with respect to this particular piece of legislation, allowing counties, giving them the opportunity to combine their locations or combine their precincts if they're precinct-based voting, to have a higher threshold so that they can service more voters with that location can help with some of the ballot privacy issues that our state has been experiencing, because the greater number of voters that are voting at a particular location, the harder it is going to be to identify an individual voter's ballot. And I think one of the other things that we've talked a little bit about was the idea of perhaps looking at what type of information is reported out when we report things out by location. As you know, the Secretary of State's office is required to put our poll lists on our website, the rosters, the individual people that voted. We are currently not indicating on that list the location at which an individual votes, and we've talked about that as being done as a form of protection of voter privacy. And that's something, while it's not specific to this legislation, it supports that idea that when we're reporting that out, limiting some of those data points can help with the ballot secrecy issue.
Okay. And the idea that people have a choice of actually going to their precinct to vote, the polling location that contains their precinct, or they could vote at another polling location.
Yes, sir, that's correct. With early voting, anybody can vote at any location On Election Day, for those counties that are opting to utilize the countywide polling place program, they would be able to vote at the location closest to their precinct, the one that's typically designed to serve the voters in that area, or they could opt to vote somewhere else. So a voter has the choice as to where they vote.
So we've got uniformity. Instead of having two procedures for early voting, election day, and everything, we have one procedure now, single set of equipment that the counties don't have to deploy new equipment for election day. They continue using what was deployed on day one for early voting. So it simplifies the process.
Yes, sir. The way I read the initial file bill and this committee substitute both do the same thing. We are creating a single report for the results at the end of election day, and that report would include any votes cast at that location, even if that was an early voting location as well. So rather than stopping early voting 4 days before election day and taking down the equipment and generating reports, that location is being used through election day, and all of the reporting that goes along with it is going to be generated that day. So we would have a report at the end of that day that encompasses everything that's happened throughout the early voting period.
Yeah. And one of the things I've mentioned or talked about was the fact that for early voting, we're only able to run a zero tape. That's the tape that makes sure there are no pre-stored votes in the machine. But when early voting ends, no one is allowed to run that tape because it would divulge votes. So we now have to wait 4 days, and anything can happen in 4 days between the time that tape could be run in the way we currently do it. But by combining into a single event, early voting and election day, where the zero tape is run just before the polls open on the first day of voting, but the results tape is not run until the end of voting on election day, we would be able to determine as soon as the polls close exactly what the vote were cast in each location, each polling location. Would you consider that to be a significant increase in security?
Yes, sir. From what you've described, we have state law that prohibits the generation of early voting tapes at the end of the early voting period at those locations because of that situation where it would release results before the authorized time. In eliminating that 4-day gap, we're generating one report with all results for that location. And so there is, that report would be generated at the polling place, for what I read in this bill, and so that means those ballots aren't being moved. No equipment's being moved, the ballots aren't being moved, they're being left in that secure location until that time that report is generated, and then the media, the electronic media from that polling location then would be read in another computer to accumulate results, but you would still have that tape that you can always compare back to ensure that the results are accurate.
Would you agree that this will eventually result in lower costs to the counties and less work for them?
I think that's a question you'd probably have to ask our county election officials.
Well, not having to have two sets of equipment.
But I do think that the ability to not have to replace your early voting equipment to be able to use the same equipment for early voting and election day, which is a departure from what current law says, could definitely have some cost savings for some of our counties.
Okay. Is there anything else that you have seen looking through the bill or what's been put together that you'd like to comment on?
No, sir. I feel like from what I've read of the bill, it's pretty straightforward with what you're attempting to do. And I think that from what you've described, sir, that's exactly what I'm reading in the bill. And
would you agree that what we're doing is almost going to be totally transparent to the voter coming in, that they will not be seeing anything really different other than showing up to the poll and voting?
Yes, sir. I think the only difference that I see for the voter would be the dates of early voting. They would shift just a little bit, but they're not losing any early voting dates with this particular bill. And then as far as the processing of results, those are not things that the voter would be impacted by. So the voting experience would stay the same, but the reports that are generated would be a little bit different.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator Hall. Dean Saffarini, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, would this bill shorten the number of days that persons can vote?
No, ma'am, not in the committee substitute.
It would not?
It would not.
And by allowing precincts to be combined, it would lessen the number of precincts, would it not? Or does it allow a county to combine some and add some precincts?
It would be up to the county to make that determination. It does give them some flexibility to combine locations so that they're not having to have unreasonable expenditures and open locations across the street from each other, which is consistent with what our previous law used to be. So this is actually returning certain parts of the election code to what it used to be to give counties a little bit more flexibility with combining locations. And for some counties, that may result in fewer locations. Some of that is county choice. It's really up to the county to determine what their needs are.
But they could combine some precincts and add new ones.
Oh, yes, ma'am, correct, yes.
It doesn't
correct.
prohibit that at all.
It's not no, ma'am, it is not affecting the county's ability to add or increase locations.
And during this period, would voters be able to vote at any location, or would they have to go to their designated location?
During the early voting period, so up into Election Day, state law dictates that voters can vote anywhere in the county, and that is maintained with this legislation. They can vote anywhere in the county.
That is
And then
not eliminated in this
No,
bill.
ma'am, it's not eliminating that. And then I would just specify that on Election Day, it's not changing Election Day either. If a county is opting to use the countywide program and they have applied and been deemed successful through the Secretary of State's office, they'd be able to continue to use countywide, or a county could opt for precinct based on Election Day.
So how would early voting as we know it change in this bill?
What it would do is the start date of early voting would shift forward 4 days, and the end date would shift forward 4 days. And so early voting would start on a Thursday instead of on a Monday, and it would end the Tuesday before Election Day. However, under this legislation, while early voting may end that day, we are not closing down those locations, we're not removing equipment, we're not replacing equipment with new equipment. Those locations that are early voting locations would turn around and be Election Day locations as well.
Thank you. I have been told that this bill would eliminate late voting for death in the family. Excuse my allergies. That it would eliminate late voting for death in the family. Does it?
Yes, ma'am, and that's because that procedure was available for individuals. If you had a death in the family and it occurred after the end of early voting, but before Election Day, those individuals that may have to leave town or take action with respect to that situation in their family, there was an alternative process for those individuals since they didn't have the benefit of early voting. And so that process has been eliminated because now early voting goes all the way through Election Day. So that law was in place to cover that gap when there were no voting opportunities for that person. It was too late to vote by mail, and there was no in-person voting opportunities. But with this bill, since the early voting period goes all the way through to Election Day, if there's a death that happens within that 4-day period, they still have the ability to vote in person.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dean. Senator Parker, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Christina, thank you for all that you do, and you're always so professional and do a great job in preparing for all these bills, and very grateful to you. Question for you. Based on what you've said thus far, Senator Hall's layout, is it your testimony that this process, as outlined by Senator Hall's bill, would effectively increase the protection of an individual's ballot from an integrity perspective in terms of how they cast their ballot? Is it your testimony that, in fact, would be the case?
I think it does have the potential to do that, since those early voting locations are going to be staying open through Election Day. That's just more ballots that have been cast at a given location, and the more ballots, the more voters that vote at a given location, the harder it's going to be to identify an individual voter's ballot.
Okay, very good. And then secondly, just from an administrator's perspective, being concerned with all of our administrators around the state and how hard they work and their teams, it also seems like Senator Hall's bill really eases a lot of the burden for them having to shift, to stop, start, shifting equipment. All those things really kind of go away with this model as well. Is that right?
What I would say to that is it is a change, and I think the counties that are here can speak to more specifically how that change will impact their their operations in an election. So there is a change there, and there is going to be an adjustment period. But I do think the ability to reuse, or not, I'm sorry, not reuse, but to continue using the same election equipment from early voting to election day, I think that can be something that can help ease some of those burdens. The fact that they're not having to go through the effort to break down the location and return all of their supplies, they're doing that all at the same time. It could be something that is helpful to counties, and I think they can probably speak to that.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you, Senator Parker. Any other questions for Ms. Atkins at this point? Very well. Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
We'll open public testimony on Senate Bill 2753. The chair calls Dr. Laura Presley. Jennifer Doinoff. And Ed Johnson. Welcome to each of you. Dr. Presley, go ahead and introduce yourself. Give us your testimony. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Thank you, Senator Hall. This is a really, really good bill, and I'm grateful for it. I think what it does, it fixes our result tape issue with early voting, and I think that is a massive, massive win for this, for our state. I just had a chance to look at the substitute today after I arrived here. There is one maybe inconsistency in this with Chapter 127 of the Election Code, which is the Central Counting Station chapter. On page 11, line 5, it says it's section 85.071, and that's delivery of ballots to main polling place. Correct me if I'm wrong, and Secretary of State may correct me if I'm wrong on this. This section really dealt with ballots cast not on a voting machine, and it contradicts the delivery of ballots to the central counting station. So Chapter 85 and Chapter 127 don't really match up, because most of our counties do countywide, and they do a central counting station. And so Chapter 127, Section 127.066 contravenes this section on page 11, because it says in 127.066, when you're delivering ballots to the central counting station, first of all, it has to be done by 2 officers, not 1. And then it's delivered to the central counting station, not the main early voting place. So you may want to look at that and try to bridge that gap. Even today, the main early voting polling place is not the elections office. Sometimes it's just another place around the county, and you don't want to be delivering ballots there. The other thing is, I'd like to just close with this. This does not fix our secrecy issue. We're still going to have it. It may reduce it to some extent, but we are still going to have a ballot secrecy issue, even if we redact the information. The election administrators and the vendors and election employees will still have access to how many people vote. And I know that's another topic for another day, but thank you.
Senator Hall, you're recognized.
But while there is a question about that, I think there is a solution to it. But one solution is they can just go to their precinct and vote.
I would love that. And you know what? What if we
But
had
that's a choice they will have. They will have a choice.
I'm in agreement.
And so the idea was to give people and
Yes.
counties as much choice. If people felt that the convenience of going someplace else and vote is more important than the secrecy of their ballot. If it's the case, I still don't buy that we cannot fix it, but they will still they would have that choice. They could go to their precinct and vote, and it's solved. But thank you for your input, and I look forward to working with you.
Yes, and one more, but voters need to know that it's their choice. And I think voters do not in this moment, and as we sit here today, if you signed the poll book and you had to sign something that said, if I'm the only person from my precinct voting at this location, I acknowledge my ballot is not secret. Voters do not know in this moment that their ballots are not secret if they're voting outside their area and they're the only person at that location. Election administrators still have access to it, election employees, vendors. Voters don't know it, and I wish there was a way we could do a campaign to let voters know that they should choose voting in their own area.
It's their choice. Thank you.
Bless you. Thank you.
And thank you. Mr. Dornoff, welcome. Introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm Jennifer Dornoff. I'm the chair of Texas Association of County Election Officials and also the Hays County Election Administrator. And I'm here to speak neutrally on the bill. And I want to thank Senator Hall for his work on this bill, along with the Secretary of State's office. And I do agree that this could simplify the process. And I think that the comments that I hear from members, and I just got the committee sub too, so I have not really had a chance to talk to other members about it. But in past talking about this, we heard comments, you know, just logistically, how does this work? How are we going to set up additional polling locations on Election Day? So if the Secretary of State's office comes back up, maybe they can address that. But if not, we would work with your office on that and see what those logistics look like as well. But otherwise, we do think that it could have the potential, if we were raising that threshold of people voting at the location, to help with the ballot privacy issue. And I also agree that we could work on some education to let voters know that that issue is there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for your testimony. Mr. Johnson, introduce yourself. Go ahead. Welcome.
Ed Johnson here with Harris County Ballot Security too. Great stuff in this bill. Really excited about it. I will tell you, you know, the increasing the size is good and giving counties the flexibility to choose the size I really like. We also, the ability to report by polling location, so you know that you have the complete poll in and can have some kind of audit trails good. And then you're saying that afterwards you could get a precinct by precinct report, so that for people running campaigns and doing other analysis, they would have that information. I think we could also get it to where you could, like 99%, get the ballot secrecy problem fixed. You're never gonna 100% get the ballot secrecy problem fixed, because there always could be one person. You could have a real slow election, you only have one person vote on one day and anywhere, you know? It could happen. But if we kept the time, you know, the date that they voted secret, what day, and then also didn't report, just reported numbers, you could make a complete list of here's everybody that's voted that day, but not by location. I think you could get around to where you could keep it pretty secret where no one could figure it out. One that I would say that still, as we talked, a little concerning to me, is that 4 days in larger counties has been used to transition between early voting and Election Day. Now, a lot of stuff can happen with the equipment in that time, which I do not like, but that is going to be a change for counties, because they transition, they take their staff and use it for getting ready for Election Day from early voting, so they'll be doubling up. I would really recommend some kind of pilot program. You said had counties that are really on board with this. I would recommend, you know, always like to do things little steps at a time to make sure they work. Maybe have a little pilot program there to make sure we work all the kinks out before we throw it statewide. So, thank you for the bill.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for your testimony. Senator Hall, do you have questions for the panel?
I just wonder if we call this Secretary of State's office back up to possibly answer some of the questions.
Would you like these folks to hold tight while I have them at the same time?
Yeah.
If y'all don't mind, keep your seats, and we'll ask Christina Atkins to return to the table. Ms. Atkins, welcome back. Introduce yourself again, and then we'll
my name is Christina Adkins. I'm the Director of Elections for the Texas Secretary of State's office.
get a little closer on the end.
I'm sorry.
No problem. Senator Hall, you have the panel.
Yeah. Ms. Presley raised a question about page 11.
Yes, sir, I'm aware. Okay. So I heard the discussion, and so What I see here is that there's two things that have to happen. So we have to always have a delivery rule for elections in which we're not having a central counting station or elections in which somebody's hand counting. And that's why this delivery rule is in place and has been slightly modified, but it retains that delivery rule for those locations in which we don't have central count, because not everybody has central count. But if you look down at C2, which starts on line 18, let's see here. At the close of early voting at the branch polling place, voted ballots to be counted using automatic tabulating equipment shall be retained or delivered in the manner described by subsection A. So the delivery rules for ballots that are counted using automatic tabulating equipment, these delivery rules are all outlined in Chapter 127. And so you would look to Chapter 127 to put those specific rules in place for this type of election. It's just that we need the language at the top to cover those elections in which we don't use the central count.
Okay. Thank you. I think that answers Ms. Christie's question, not to put words in her mouth, but
So we have
other
to-
than nodding of the head.
Yeah, line 24 through 26 needs to say 127.066, and I think that's a simple fix. Yeah.
I guess my question, did anybody else have a question that she might be able to answer, clarification?
No, I think the question I had was just logistically what that looks like, or I guess what the recommendation would be for larger, mid-sized to larger counties to set up polling locations.
And what I would say is in this bill, there is nothing that impacts or changes the timelines that are in place for counties now to set up locations. It doesn't prescribe that they have to be set up within a certain time period. I know in some jurisdictions, they'll start setting up a few days before Election Day, those larger locations that may serve a lot of voters. And that's permissible as long as the locations are secure and they're able to securely store any equipment that's there. And I would also add that there are limitations on what can be in these locations. For example, ballots, the ballot paper that's used, certain things like that, the electronic media with the different devices. There are some limitations there on when that can be delivered, but as far as getting your polling locations prepared and set up, nothing in this bill changes their ability to start that earlier.
Okay. And part of the going to the larger polling, allowing for larger, allows a county that may have a few really good places to vote, that they may want to have a larger number of people voting in fewer places. And for those counties that want to do it otherwise, they can adjust their size. It's just that they need to be within 95% homogeneous across the county in there. So they get a fair and balanced distribution of polling locations. But to give counties more flexibility, that those that might want to have larger ones and few of them, that's fine. Or more of them and smaller, that's okay too. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator, is there any questions for any of our witnesses on this panel anymore? Very well. Thank you each for being here. You're excused. We'll continue testimony on Senate Bill 2753. Public testimony is open, and the chair calls Morgan Whetstone, Allison Hoke, Isabel Lang, Emily French, Susan Carranza, Dr. Susan Carranza. And the chair calls Matilda Miller. All right, welcome to each of you. We're going to start over here on my left, your right, and just remember on the end, get close to that microphone, introduce yourself, and go ahead.
Hello, my name is Isabel. I'm here against the bill. Reading through it, there's a lot there, and I think what concerns me is that I'm not sure that they're replacing early voting with something else or completely doing away with it, or and same thing with mail-in ballots. And I think any amount of friction that is increased between voters and voting tends to lead to people who don't want to, who can't show up or won't show up. I think about my grandmother who was bedbound, for close to 10 years, who needed the mail-in ballots and whatnot, and we had to do that. I mean, there was no way to get her to the polling centers or anything like that. So I think any kind of shift like this. I mean, I know it was said that this would be transparent, but I'm not. I mean, just reading over it, it's I don't know how many pages of really dense legal text that, to the average person just is hard to parse out. And I'm not sure how this is going to interact in the future with other voting laws, like the real ID stuff, and all of that is it's a big concern to me. I don't know where this puts us in general. Especially the testimonies before seemed to be in the details, but not the larger picture. I wasn't able to get a really good grasp on what the points of contention were.
Thanks for your testimony. Ms. French, welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Hi, I'm Emily French. I'm representing Common Cause Texas. I registered against the bill, but my concerns have been resolved by the committee substitute. So I'd like to thank Senator Hall and change my registration to on.
We will note that. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
That's all I've got.
Very good. Thanks for your testimony. Thanks for being here. Welcome back. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Hi, my name is Allison Hoke, and representing myself, and I oppose Senate Bill 2753. Not every Texan finds polling locations accessible. 12% of the state's population, or roughly 3 to 4 million Texans, has a disability, physical disabilities making up a significant part of that percent. Without absentee voting, these people would not be able to make it to polling stations without taking up a significant amount of their time, their valuable time, let alone if the closest polling station is in another town. Now, I did hear that the state would try and open up as many polling stations as necessary, but I'm not sure how that's going to interact with.
Get a little closer so we can get your testimony.
My apologies. Okay. While it may sound like this is meant to prevent voter fraud, I believe this is nothing short of voter suppression. And the passing of this bill will take away the ability and opportunity to help influence the outcomes of our elections for millions of Texans. In order to keep our right to vote, the committee must reject Senate Bill 2753. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Hi, my name is Morgan Whetstone, and I am opposing this bill. I did have something written to read out, but I don't have it for you guys. But everything that I wrote was already addressed, and I have different concerns now that, from what I understand, not her, but the person you had here earlier, the person in charge of the voting.
The lady from the Secretary of State's office. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
She said that they're moving the early voting to being before and after the actual voting day instead of just before. And I don't understand how that's going to interact with, on voting day, you should have all the votes you need by then to count.
I think what she said was that right now we have early voting here, then there's a gap, and then there's election day. This would just move everything forward. So early voting would last just as long as it does now. It would start 3 days later, and it would go 3 days longer. Not to argue with you, but if that helps, that's really what the bill's about. But go ahead.
And then also coalescing the voting stations, I feel, makes it harder to access than it would be if there were just multiple smaller locations. Those are my concerns.
Well, thanks for your testimony. Thanks for being here. Remember, on the end, you got to get close. Welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Hi, I'm Matilda Miller. You talk a lot about transparency on this, but I would like a simple yes or no question, or a simple yes or no answer to a question about what's right at the top of this bill that states that it abolishes absentee voting. Does it abolish absentee voting?
Senator, I'll go ahead if you wish.
Is that a yes or a no?
No, it does not.
Then why does it say that at the top of the bill?
I think you don't have this committee substitute. You have the original.
Okay, thank you.
So then why is it that when I go onto the texaslegislature.gov site, this is not the bill that comes up?
This is the committee substitute that we just got back from Ledge Council over the weekend.
Mm-hmm. And it's Monday. Y'all are only required to give about 48 hours notice for these meetings at the minimum. I mean, 3 days is generous. I saw that this hearing was scheduled on a Friday, so if you can update the bill, you can't update the file in the same amount of time that you schedule and arrange this entire hearing? It seems a little busy.
The hearing is set based on the bill that's filed, and then between that time, there's input from stakeholders and changes are made. So the committee substitute has not been adopted by the committee. It's a proposal. So Central Hall's committee substitute is the most recent version of the bill. It hasn't been passed either. So right now the filed bill is still there, but the one you've just been handed is the one that we're working from now.
Okay then. Well, there was some talk earlier about security of mail-in ballots. This has been a widely debunked talking point, often spouted, that there is any kind of widespread mail-in voter fraud. And I don't have time to go over the entirety of this bill right here in my 2-minute testimony, but I will say that any removal of opportunities to vote by mail-in, by absentee ballot, absolutely is disenfranchising disabled and working class people here in Texas.
Well, thanks for your testimony. Members, any questions at Central Hall?
I'll just answer a couple of questions. This bill changes nothing with mail-in ballots. This bill changes nothing with absentee ballots. And this bill changes nothing with access to polling locations at all. It has the same opportunities as we currently have. And the issue about moving early voting, it simply moves early voting forward 3 days so that it ends, or the early voting phase ends the day before Election Day. So it's one continuous period of the 12 days of early voting plus Election Day. Same number of days, same locations, same process. It will essentially be invisible to the voter. There are no changes in access. I'm not sure what you heard about before and after. It's just one continuous process, and I've got a handout. Kathy, why don't you?
I was just reading
With
the
a
bill
graphic
that was online.
that explains that for you. So to ask you, your major concerns is that it has, for the access is the same. Mail-in ballots are the same. The number of days are the same. The big change is that counties now only have to have one set of equipment. Currently, they have to have duplicate sets of equipment because they have to use different equipment on Election Day than they do in early voting. Now they deploy the equipment one time, and it's there all the way through the end, and they can deploy additionals for Election Day. But as far as the vote is concerned, you'll vote exactly the same way. I doubt that many counties will even change the locations that they've had available, and all of the ADA requirements will still be there. And in fact, it has no impact on them.
Okay.
And if you have any more questions, feel free to call our office. We'd be glad to talk with you about it.
Okay.
All right.
And members, any other questions for this
Thank you for
panel?
coming to testify.
We thank each one of you for being here. Everyone's input matters, so thank you for being here. Thanks for your questions. The chair calls Dr. Susan Carranza, Heather Stalter, Arshia Papari, and Lucy Trainer. Trainer, welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Lucy Trainer. I am representing self, but I also represent SD25 on the SREC with Travis and Bexar counties as part of our district. And in the past, in the last several years, I've worked with different county chairs, and particularly urban county chairs, who would really like to see our state go back to precinct-based voting. And they see that as the only way forward in terms of tracking information and transparency, and ultimately having the grassroots be able to get at some of these numbers and to properly do audits. So whatever we can do to get back to precinct-based voting, I know that the committee sub is something a little different, but I just want to be on record saying that our urban county chairs really need the help of going back to precinct-based voting. And I think that gets us closer to the implementation of the Trump executive order on election integrity, and it would be great for our state.
Hey, thanks for your testimony. Members, any questions for Ms. Trainer? Thank you for being here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 2753? Seeing none, hearing none, public testimony is closed. Bill's left pending at this time. Thanks, Senator Hall. The chair now lays out Senate Bill 2225. Recognizes our colleague, Senator Hancock, to explain the measure. Welcome, Senator.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Y'all look tired. Looks like you could all use a drink. So let me see if I can help. Senate Bill 2225 is based on RTDs, what we call them around here, which is simply ready to drink. And so ready to drink are products made with distilled spirits and are single serve and portable. So fairly new into the market, very popular within the market. But under current law, the convenience stores and grocery stores are permitted to sell beer and wine-based products with an alcohol level up to 17%. So literally, we're just talking regarding the content of this mixed beverage in a container. The alcohol volume, however, these same retailers are prohibited from selling spirited-based RTDs, even though most of these beverages fall within the same or lower ABV range as many of the wine and malt-based products already on the shelves. This inconsistency in Texas law creates confusion for customers. Many of the drinks look identical. The contents are just slightly different. Alcohol level can be the same or slightly different. And it puts Texas businesses at a disadvantage. Senate Bill 2225 would modernize the outdated alcohol code by allowing grocery stores and convenience stores to sell spirit-based RTDs alongside beer and wine. It would do so by the following, and I'm going to state this, but we've got recommendations from varying sides that we're looking at working with. So this will not be the finished product, but it's a good starting place on doing that. So as we continue to work with stakeholders here. First, under the current bill, it would create a spirit cooler certificate that may be used to existing wine and malt beverage retailer permit holders, allowing them to also sell spirited-based RTDs. It would also create a territorial limits within the sale of spirit coolers by allowing each manufacturer or non-resident sellers permittee to designate which brands are available for distribution within this defined regions, promoting a more orderly market access. And lastly, it adds a language to mirror the beer industry fair dealing law to establish a competitive and balanced distribution framework that addresses matters such as contractual agreements, transfer of business assets or stock, and the prohibition of unfair trade practices The update will bring some additional information too, and this update within the code itself would align Texas law with consumer demand and supply, simplify the regulatory environment for businesses.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any questions for Senator Hancock on 2225? Very well, we'll open public testimony, and the chair calls Corey Stanisis, Paul Harden, Dewey Bracken, Russell Withers, John McCord.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, my name is Corey Stanisia, and I'm with the Distilled Spirits Council of the U.S. We're in support of Senate Bill 2225. You're going to hear probably a lot about camels' noses under tents, lots of Chicken Little, the sky's falling, and maybe more about hard liquor to try to scare you today. But alcohol is alcohol. It should not matter whether the beverage is made with alcohol from grapes, malts, or grains. The ingredient that makes the chemical element of alcohol should not be the determining factor on where these products can be sold, but rather their alcohol by volume or ABV levels. Ready-to-drink spirit coolers, or RTDs, are the fastest growing alcohol category. These are low alcohol, pre-mixed canned cocktails made with small amounts of distilled spirits that adult consumers want, especially as moderation becomes more prevalent. There are very popular RTDs made with malt, wine, or fermented sugar being sold in grocery and convenience stores in Texas right now, today. Grocery and convenience stores in Texas are already permitted and frankly well-equipped to currently sell up to 17% ABV beverages like wine, high ABV beers like double IPAs, or wine-based RTDs that put their nose right up to that 17% ABV limit. Our popular low ABV spirit-based RTD seltzers or iced teas just happen to be made with small amounts of distilled spirits, and surprising to many, sit far lower at 4.5% ABV or 9 proof. Yes, 9, not 80 proof, or more like their hard liquor example you might hear today would lead you to believe. But currently our beverages are banned from being sold at grocery and convenience stores and can only be found at package stores 6 days a week, despite having less alcohol than their malt or wine-based competitors. Today, package stores are the exclusive retailers of these low ABV spirit products, and they so desperately want you to help them maintain their government-mandated monopoly on these products. There's only about 3,500 package stores in all of Texas, and 22 million Texans over the age of 21. Exclusivity is good for their business, not good for freedom and not good for choice. This is not a camel with its nose under a tent. This is only an unreasonable restriction on free trade.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Could you begin, please?
Madam Chair, committee members, my name is Paul Harden, President and CEO of the Texas Food and Fuel Association, here in support of this wonderful bill. Our organization represents the 16,500 convenience stores, travel centers, gas stations, and more across the state. We're one of the most regulated groups, industries in the entire state. We are subject to over 36 state and federal regulatory agencies, and that doesn't even go into county and local ordinances as well. Our members take this very seriously when it comes to being able to sell under current law. Much has been made in other testimony about underage people that you have to be 21 to go in a liquor store. You have to be 21 to serve liquor. You don't have to be 21 to serve liquor in the state of Texas. We have 18-year-olds that are serving liquor. And then when it comes to the clerks in a convenience store, they have the same training that a 30-year-old bartender has when it comes to server, seller training. So they're very well trained. Got a couple of props for you. Bud Light, 5% roughly ABV. White Claw, we can sell both of these right now, have the same amount of alcohol by volume. But you get into some of the more popular ones that are out there that have actual vodka in them, 5% ABV as well, but we can't sell these because they have liquor or spirits in them. 5% ABV is 5% ABV, no matter the ingredient behind it. And we can sell legally up to 17%. So obviously we're in support of this. Wholesale beer distributors are actually distributing these products, so I'm not sure why they're opposed to it. Maybe we should ask, but thank you for the time.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and committee members. My name is Dewey Bracken. I'm here representing the Food and Fuel Association. I am a licensed attorney in the state of Texas. I've been practicing liquor law for about 30 years. First 10 years of my career I was with the Attorney General's office and staff attorney at the TABC, and I've been in private practice for about 20 years. I do support this bill. I think it's a common sense bill. As we've heard, alcohol is agnostic. Alcohol, it doesn't matter if you get the alcohol from fermentation of a malt, from fermentation of a fruit, or from fermentation of a sugar. In fact, in 2019, the legislature in the TABC Sunset Bill actually changed the definition of a malt beverage to include malt substitutes. Prior to 2019, some of the drinks like you just saw up here, White Claw as an example, is actually made from fermented sugar and not a malt. So in House Bill at 1545, that was revised to include malt substitutes like sugar, like beets, like corn actually, that make the alcohol from a sugar and not a grain. So there is some precedent for the legislature updating these laws to keep track of these new products as they come in the market. The White Claws and what I call the sugar beers being a prime example of that. Again, alcohol is agnostic. If I have 2 glasses of a nice Zinfandel or a Malbec, those are usually 15, 16% alcohol by volume, I'm going to have 3 times more alcohol in those 2 6-ounce Zinfandels than I am from 1 12-ounce High Noon or some of these other RTD ready-to-drinks. So strictly from a consumer standpoint and from a health standpoint, I think the focus should be on the alcohol by volume and not where the base of that alcohol is derived. Because chemically, alcohol, 4.5% ABV is 4.5 ABV.
Thank you, sir. Please.
Good afternoon, Senator Zaffarini, members of the committee. My name is Russell Withers. I serve as General Counsel and Director of Policy for the Texas Conservative Coalition Research Institute, and I'm testifying in favor of Senate Bill 2225, the ready-to-drink bill, or my wife calls them cocktails in a can, so that's what we call them at home. We support this bill. TCCRI looks at public policy through the lens of our LIFT principles, which is limited government, individual liberty, free enterprise, and traditional values. This bill hits squarely on 3 of those principles. We can quibble with traditional values, but of course alcohol should be consumed responsibly. This is a good bill, and what I'd really like to use my time for is to respond to some of the arguments that you'll hear against this bill. I testified on a similar bill in the House last week, and you'll hear opponents of this bill repeatedly use the term hard liquor. This bill is not about hard liquor. These are mixed beverages. They're under 17%, and they are virtually indistinguishable from alcohol already sold in regular retail stores. You're also going to hear about kids handling alcohol in stores. You'll hear a parade of horribles about 17-year-olds handling liquor. If you're a 17-year-old working in a grocery store, you're not handling liquor, you're scanning barcodes. Whether you're a cashier or a stocker, you're just handling the products that are put in front of you, and they're already handling products that are very similar to these products. So this is a good bill. It's a free market bill, and TCCRI supports it, and I urge you to as well.
Thank you, sir. Are there questions of the panel? Thank you.
I'm sorry?
I said, are there questions of the panel?
I thought you said you wanted to test some of the product.
The acoustics in this chamber are not very good, in case you haven't figured that out. Thank you. Chair calls John McCord. John McCord. Is there anyone else who would like to testify for, on, or against Senate Bill 2225 by Senator Hancock? If not, public testimony is closed and the bill will be left pending. Okay. Chair lays out Senate Bill 1540 by Senator Betancourt and recognizes Senator Hall to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Concerns have been raised about the safety of individuals who work in elections. As it is becoming more challenging to find people to work elections, we must do what we can to protect these individuals. SB 1540 adds current or former election officials, employees, volunteers, or designees of election officials or employees of the Secretary of State's office who perform duties relating to the elections to the confidentiality of a person information list. Today we have Jennifer Donoff of Hayes County, EA, and Legislative Chair of the County Elections Office Officials Association to tell you about the issues we have seen throughout the state. With that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions of the representative of the author? If not, we call a resource witness. Chair calls Jennifer Doinoff, Elections Administrator from the Texas Association of County Election Officers.
Hello again. I'm Jennifer Doinoff, the chair for Texas Association of County Election Officials and also the election administrator for Hayes County. And I am here to testify for this bill, so we're glad to see this bill here. Confidentiality of election officials and workers is crucial in this day and time when passions are running higher than ever for the outcomes of elections. And finding, as you said, Senator Hall, finding full-time employees and election workers has become more and more difficult. And personally, I always get the question during training, what are they doing to protect us? And as we see more and more election workers being threatened, abused, and harassed in the polling location, we're expressly and very grateful for the opportunity to support this bill. So the following counties have had threats. Bexar County Election Office has had threats to the point where their former EA was being followed to and from work and had to take different paths and had to bring in law enforcement. Also, their office had somebody come in with a gun and jump the counter and run into the staff area. And then also they had poll workers that were assaulted in the polling location. Additionally, Tarrant County and Dallas County have had, their EA had threats. Their EA has had persons to come to their home and try to interview them. That's what was said, but they came on the weekend to the home, and this bill would have protected that address so that that could not occur. And then there have also been, that election official also had threats to their family and themselves as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there questions of the witness? Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who would like to testify for, on, or against Senate Bill 1540 by Senator Betancourt? There is? All right. Chair calls Dr. Laura Presley, Ed Johnson, and Tanisha Hudspeth. Please begin.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Senator Zaffirini. I spoke with Jason regarding the intent of
Could you please identify yourself by name and title?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Can you say that again?
Could you please begin by identifying yourself by name and title and whom you represent? We'll start your time over.
Yes, ma'am. I'm Dr. Laura Presley, representing True Texas Elections, and my position is on the bill of Senate Bill 1540. Let me go ahead? Okay. As I was saying, I spoke with Senator Betancourt's office regarding the bill, and I think potentially the section that's being amended may not be the section they intended. Section 552.1175 has to do with exceptions to releasing personally identifying information, which means it could mean the person's name. We're on an election report, on chain of custody records, on seals, on central counting station returns, redacting their name from those forms. When I spoke with Jason today, he goes, that's not the intent of the bill. The intent of the bill was to protect their personal information, their cell phone, their email addresses, personally, et cetera. So I'm thinking, and I gave this handout to Jason, email Senator Betancourt and Jason, that I think really what needs to be inserted is into the language here, into 552.117, not 552.1175, okay? Because we have to be able to audit. We have to know what polling location, where the judges were, what central counting station presiding judge signed the returns, who's signing the seals, all of that. If you want to report some type of law violation, you have to know who to report. So I think there may have been some confusion on which of those sections applied. And I'm here for questions.
Thank you so much. Ms. Hudspeth?
Good evening. I'm Tanisha Hudspeth, Harris County Clerk, and it is a pleasure to be before you all this evening. I want to thank Senator Betancourt in his absence in support of this bill, and very thankful for it. My colleagues and I have expressed many concerns of safety for many years, and while elected officials have had this protection, it is well overdue for election officials and our employees. If I could add Kaufman County to one of the many counties that have had disturbances in terms of threats, but in Harris County alone, I can tell you as the county clerk working prior, many years before becoming the county clerk, it was pretty uneventful. In recent years, the county clerk myself has had security, full-time security for all of the many locations in which I've had to go to. I've been blessed enough not to have a personal direct threat, but we have had threats to our employees. So this is not well overdue, but this will also give a sense of protection for our teams, and they feel a little bit better about going to sleep at night. So just want to say thank you in support of this, and that's all I have for now.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Johnson?
There he goes. Ed Johnson. I'm here with the Harris County Ballot Security, and yes, this is a very important bill. I personally have been involved with this before. You know, we've had, protesters and rioters outside our building and waiting to harass us when we walked out. Thank goodness they didn't know there was an underground tunnel to get to the garage, so we were able to sneak around them. But it can be a very big hassle, and you do have people that rile up and put a lot of employees, at jeopardy these days. So it is a very important thing that we do here. Now, I've heard of even election judges that, will sometimes at polling locations get harassed, and they don't want it.
Thank you so much. Are there questions of the panel? Senator Parker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for the excellent testimony, and I want to, in particular, thank you for your leadership and being involved in this in the front lines and taking care of yourself and all the folks that are so vital to protecting the vote. So I wanted to also give you an opportunity to make final comments. I know you maybe had.
The only thing I wanted to add is our law enforcement. It has definitely placed more demands on our law enforcement to be supportive from early voting through Election Day. We all know that they are stretched in many different avenues. And so we have the partnership of our constable, sheriff, all those on board. But when it comes to that, it is definitely putting more demands on our law enforcement. And we thank them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Is there anyone else who would like to testify for, on, or against Senate Bill 1540 by Senator Betancourt? If not, public testimony is closed. Thank you, panel.
Thank you.
And the bill will be left pending. Chair lays out Senate Bill 2382 by Senator Betancourt and recognizes Senator Hall to explain it for him.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Concerns have been raised about offline counties and the ability of the Secretary of State's office to work with those systems to ensure timely and up-to-date voter rolls. Currently, there are 32 offline counties. However, the Secretary of State's office is working with multiple counties to transition them onto the state system when the new TEAMS system rolls out in July. SB 2382 simply requires counties in the state to work with the SOS office to use the statewide computerized voter registration list. This change will ensure that the SOS office can work with counties throughout the state to ensure timely and up-to-date voter rolls. We will have a committee substitute that hasn't come back yet that makes technical changes to remove the words contact with the Secretary of State's office, since this is not how the arrangement is made with their office. And I believe today we have Christina Atkins from the Secretary of State's office to discuss the new TEAM system and how this will help both the counties and the state ensure timely and up-to-date voter rolls.
Thank you so much. Are there questions of the representative of the author? Are there questions of the resource witness from the Secretary of State's office? If not, the floor is now open for public testimony. Chair calls Ben Martin, Joaquin Garcia, Frank Phillips, Jennifer Dornoff, and Adam Haynes. Ben Martin, Joaquin Garcia, Frank Phillips, Jennifer Dornoff, and Adam Haynes. Please begin.
Good afternoon. I'm Frank Phillips. I'm the Elections Administrator in Denton County, Texas, and I am here in opposition of SB 2382. Currently, approximately 75% of the voters in the state of Texas reside in offline counties, meaning that their county has chosen to use a vendor other than the state of Texas vendor for voter registration purposes. I have two main points for my opposition. The first, and these are software related, they're not, this isn't about the Secretary of State's office or their staff. They're wonderful people. This is strictly about software. First is a capacity issue. It's a huge concern for me. And I say that because it's not uncommon for us elections administrators to hear other elections administrators or see by email, especially during election times, is team down again? Is team running slow? And that's with just roughly 25% of the voters having some kind of activity on team. In 16 years of being an elections administrator, I've never had to ask if my vendor was down. They're always up and running. My second point, and I think the most critical, is a single point of failure. One of the strengths of Texas elections and elections across the United States is that we have decentralized systems as far as voting systems go, meaning we use standalone systems that aren't tied together and from many different vendors. Voter registration systems should be and remain decentralized as they currently are in Texas. Today, if something were to happen to team, whether we're shut down for a small amount of time or permanently, 25% of the voters would be affected. The other 75% are protected by my offline vendor.
Thank you, sir. Please begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Joaquin Garcia, and I'm here in opposition of Senate Bill. I have worked in Texas elections for the past 17 years, and I have worked both at the local county level, and I currently support offline Texas counties. While I believe the intention behind Senate Bill 2382 may be well-meaning, it assumes that what works for one county will work for all. Counties across the state differ dramatically in population, technological infrastructure, and staffing capacity. Switching to a single software solution doesn't account for these critical differences and adds unnecessary risk. Elections are not just about procedures, they're about trust, transparency, and the ability of each jurisdiction to serve their voters effectively. Flexibility is not a luxury. In election work, it is a necessity. I urge the committee to consider the unique circumstances of each county and allow for flexibility in implementing voter registration systems. Collaboration and support will better serve our shared goal of maintaining accurate and secure voter rolls across Texas. I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for yours, sir.
Senators, committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Ben Martin. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for VR Systems Incorporated, and we provide service to many of the offline counties here in Texas. So I come in opposition to this bill for many reasons. My job as Chief Operating Officer is to oversee the operations that supports our customers. One of the primary functions is cybersecurity and dealing with threats that come at us. I heard the committee speaking earlier about hostile states. One of the key things to protect against a hostile state is the decentralization. If you recall, back in 2016, there were attacks by nation-state actors against U.S. elections, which is critical infrastructure. Those attacks were successful in places like Illinois, where they had a statewide voter registration system, much like the team system, and they were not operated offline. They also attempted to attack in Florida, but in Florida, they operate much like the offline counties here in Texas, and their voter registration systems are the primary systems in the county, but they feed up and provide information to the state. And I am making sure I'm keeping up. So my concern is that this move by this bill would bring undue risk to the state of Texas. Nation-state actors are looking for opportunities to do the least amount of work with the most impact or effect. And if you move all of the counties to the same system in Texas, you're going to draw a big target on the back of that system. If that system should go down at the state, the offline counties are still able to operate and continue to function as normal. Once they're all moved online, if the state system goes down, it takes away the functionality for those counties to be able to continue to operate. In looking, if I may have just one more moment.
I'm sorry, sir, your time is up.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. There will be questions of the panel.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Doinoff?
Hi, yes, I'm Jennifer Doinoff, the chair for Texas Association of County Election Officials and also the Hays County Elections Administrator, and I'm here to testify neutrally on the bill. And as you heard from my colleague Frank, we do have some counties that are concerned with moving towards team and what that current program looks like. My comments, I think, from an association standpoint, would lean more towards if we are going to make this change, that we would do it over some time, and we would let the state move to their new program, what we're calling Team 2.0, and let that get into place and let us do the counties that are remaining over some amount of time, because I believe, I have faith in what's coming. And I believe, some counties would choose to do that. They're already choosing to do it now. So that's where we stand from an association standpoint.
Thank you so much. Are there questions of the panel? Which one of you submitted this?
I did.
You did, Mr. Martin. And what was the additional point you wanted to make, sir?
The additional point was, it seems that the bill is attempting to give access and information to the Secretary of State. And there are methodologies to do that through technology. They control certification for the voter registration systems. They can just indicate to be recertified on an annual basis that we have to provide that access and information to the state so they can have real-time information.
Thank you so much. Are there other questions? Thank you to the panel. Chair calls Tanisha Hudspeth and Ed Johnson. Tanisha Hudspeth and Ed Johnson. And those are the last witnesses? Ms. Hudspeth?
Yes, ma'am. Tanisha Hudspeth, County Clerk, and also Chief Election Official in Harris County. Let me start by saying I am not the voter registrar, nor am I speaking on behalf of the voter registrar, but here, because in Harris County we do run on a bifurcated system. I'm neutral on this bill and in support of ensuring the maintaining of accurate voting rolls in real time. However, I do have concerns about the challenges that exist with Teams as of now. Before we talk about a Teams 2.0, we need to make sure that we are fully prepared. Some of those challenges include, but not limited to, election night results reporting, precinct by precinct reporting, and voter history. Those are just not limited to. Due to the length of Harris County ballot and a lot of systems that we have to upload now, there are challenges with that information and the size of it. So I have those concerns in terms of Teams now, and of course, some of the concerns that were articulated a little bit earlier in terms of systems going down, right? You never want to be in a one-stop shop situation. You always want to have backup systems. So my suggestion is, if this bill continues forward, is that election officials across the state will need more time for implementation and testing this system out, testing it out, making sure it works, touching, feeling it, and working continuously with the Secretary of State to lean on the testing of that system. So again, thank you for your time and listening to my testimony.
Thank you for yours. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, Ed Johnson here, also for Harris County Ballot Security. And first time I've been on a Senator Betancourt bill. So yeah, I have concerns. A lot of them you have heard up here. To sum it up real quickly, a lot of other states accomplish this through what they call an API, where you can have real-time software updates. And I know a lot of the offline vendors, I've visited with them, really would like to have this. The question with the Secretary of State is security. So I would hope maybe we could come to some, study that of finding a secure way we could have real-time access between these counties and states. That gives you the best of both worlds. Secretary of State could have real-time access to whatever data they want out of the offline counties, information, notices, updates, whatever, and it still gives you, the county, the ability to have their own system. And why they're paying money for their own system is they have customized software that helps them in these large counties do their jobs more efficiently that Teams does not have currently. That's why they're still staying on this offline. So for them to be able to keep that, for the Secretary of State to prove up that they can handle the volume, it's going to be a huge volume increase. I think if we were able to implement an API, they could prove up that they can handle the volume, and then you're going to leave the offline counties with the ability to still have their own custom software to help them with the tasks that they have worked on over the years.
Thank you so much. Are there questions of the panel? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to testify for, on, or against Senate Bill 2382? If not, public testimony is closed and the bill will be left pending. Senator Parker, are you ready? Chair lays out Senate Bill 2487 by Senator Parker and recognizes the author to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members, for allowing me to speak on Senate Bill 2487. Senate Bill 2487 is aimed at tackling the intersection of homelessness and mental health crises in our largest urban areas. While we do not have a formal committee substitute today, I will note that we are working to incorporate feedback from all the various stakeholders who are deeply concerned about how best to help individuals experiencing both homelessness and acute behavioral health challenges. So again, I want to state that to any stakeholders that are listening, don't hesitate to come see us here the next couple days as we work to wrap this up. This bill builds on recent interim findings and several large stakeholder meetings that indicate that urban counties continue to face an acute homelessness crisis, frequently coupled with mental illness or substance use disorders. The impetus for Senate Bill 2487 stems from local successes like that of Haven for Hope in San Antonio, and the broader push for frontline interventions that not only stabilize individuals but provide coordinated housing and support. Senate Bill 2047 seeks to establish a more robust infrastructure for mental health crisis management in these large counties. Under the bill, each qualifying county will be required to create at least one crisis service center operating 24/7. Think of it as a unified hub where a person in crisis can receive emergency mental health care, detox, short-term residential stabilization, and crucially, a follow-up plan that includes potential housing options. Senate Bill 2487 sets up a new emergency detention process that applies only for these crisis service centers. If a police officer or crisis response worker determines someone is a substantial risk to themselves or others and has a mental illness, they can detain the individual and bring them to the 24/7 crisis service center. Upon arrival, the individual will be evaluated by a mental health professional on site for the same criteria, giving an additional layer of protection as well as due process to the individual. As filed, the mental health professional must assess the individual immediately. This was done to give the highest possible protection to the individual. That being said, stakeholders have brought to our attention that this is not a clear enough requirement, and we are assessing ways to keep the assessment time extremely short, but while making it actionable. If determined by this mental health professional to be a substantial risk to themselves or others and to have a mental illness, the individual is then detained for a physician exam to evaluate whether the individual is a candidate for civil commitment or not. If determined to be so, the commitment process as currently established is triggered and the case is brought before a probate judge. Nothing in Senate Bill 2487 changes the civil commitment process in any way. I want to also highlight that the substantial risk to self or others is a standard that already exists in the Texas Health and Safety Code. This is already the standard officers use when detaining an individual after a wellness call under Health and Safety Code Section 573.001. The difference now is that we no longer require a warrant timing assessment, as the entire point of this new program is to provide services to those who need it without criminalizing them in any way in the process. To ensure additional protections for the individual, the warrant timing assessment is replaced by the additional assessment by the mental health professional upon arriving at the crisis service center. You will see that the filed version of the bill raised the emergency detention window from 12 to 24 hours before a physician evaluation. This was due to some stakeholder responses that requested more time. However, since filing, we have learned that 12 hours should be sufficient, and therefore a forthcoming committee substitute will keep the 12-hour threshold the same. Therefore, to reiterate the timeline of emergency detention in these crisis service centers, first, a police officer or crisis response professional contacts an individual, and if they deem them to be a substantial risk to themselves or others and to have a mental illness, the individual is detained and brought to a crisis service center. Upon arrival, a mental health professional assesses the individual to determine if they have a mental illness and are a substantial risk to themselves or others. If so, the individual is then held on emergency detention until evaluated by a doctor. This evaluation must be done within 12 hours of the mental health professional's evaluation. If the doctor deems the person suitable for a civil commitment, the current commitment process is triggered and the petition is sent to a probate judge. Another vital piece of Senate Bill 2487 requires that those who are released from emergency detention because either the mental health professional or the doctor determines that they do not meet the clinical threshold for further hold, that they be provided with immediate information on outpatient mental health care and potential housing services. This helps break the cycle of repeated homelessness by ensuring that a discharge from crisis care is coupled with a pathway to stable living arrangements. Reflecting on our discussions with homelessness service providers, Senate Bill 2487 specifically mandates close partnership between the crisis service centers and local continuum of care programs. That way, individuals aren't discharged back to the streets, but are guided into rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, or other suitable interventions. The goal is to prevent recurring crises and reduce strain on shelters and encampments. Members, this integrated approach has proven successful on a local level already. Through Senate Bill 2487, we want to offer this model statewide for all large counties with uniform standards and accountability measures like quarterly outcome reporting to ensure it truly mitigates homelessness while addressing the underlying mental health challenges. And finally, I want to emphasize that this legislation is not a one-size-fits-all approach to mental health or homelessness. We remain open to refinements that will help local governments coordinate more effectively with existing nonprofits, with faith-based organizations, and local law enforcement. Our ultimate aim is to provide a stable platform, both legally and financially, for counties to innovate and adapt, all while guaranteeing fundamental safeguards for vulnerable Texans. I want to thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee for the opportunity to lay out Senate Bill 2487. I believe it represents a thorough and compassionate strategy to reduce chronic homelessness through direct crisis intervention, extended exam windows for meaningful treatment, and an immediate follow-up linking individuals to housing. Certainly, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I know we also, Madam Chair, members, have a lot of witnesses here this evening, and I want to stress to all the stakeholders that we want to hear from them this week as we work to finalize the substitute that I intend to bring forward to the committee.
Thank you so much. Are there questions of the author? If not, the floor is now open for public testimony. The chair calls Scott Ackerson, Joe Catherine Quinn, John Benura, Hannah Heimbo, and Morgan Winters. Scott Ackerson, Joe Catherine Quinn, John Benura, Hannah Heimbo, and Morgan Winters. You each have 2 minutes. And you know I enforce the time limits.
I'm Joe Catherine Quinn. I'm the president and CEO of Caritas of Austin, and we are in support of Senate Bill 2487. Caritas provides a home and tailored services to prevent and end homelessness. We operate a range of housing programs which are effective with the various subpopulations who experience homelessness in Austin. For 19 years, we have implemented permanent supportive housing, a program which serves people with the most critical needs. For 10 years, we have maintained a 95 to 98% success rate for housing stability, the rate at which our clients do not return to the streets. However, there's one subpopulation that is difficult to reach regardless of our reliable success. People with profound and debilitating brain disorders who are not able to recognize their own illness and resist the opportunity for stable housing. A few are aggressive due to severe trauma. Humane engagement with immediate access to mental health care is the optimal intervention for both the individual and public safety. Continuing to live outside keeps them vulnerable to trauma, which exacerbates their illness. Also, diversion from the criminal justice system is both the appropriate and cost-effective intervention. Crisis service centers could enhance public safety and provide the appropriate level of care that would effectively pair with supportive housing programs, allowing communities to serve this heart-wrenching population who right now is slipping through the cracks. We'd like to thank Senator Parker for his bill. It's the product of a lot of hard work with dozens of stakeholders in this committee. We look forward to working with you too.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir?
Sure. Madam Chair, members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is John Benura, and I am a policy analyst with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. According to the Interagency Council on Homelessness, a report done back in 2020, individual trauma-based care is the most effective way to dramatically reduce homelessness by addressing mental health issues and promoting alternatives to criminalizing people experiencing homelessness. SB 2487 serves the public in two distinct ways. One, it provides for public safety by keeping those deemed a substantial risk to themselves or others due to mental illness detained after due process. And 2, it provides a pathway for individual care for those experiencing homelessness by creating the crisis service centers to coordinate individual care. SB 2487 answers the call for the approach to homelessness to center around treatment and reducing encounters with the justice system, both of which are barriers to self-sufficiency. I would like to thank Senator Parker for the work you and your team put in to write this bill, and I'm available as a resource on this bill and the larger issue of homelessness. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So much.
Oh, and just to state officially, I'm for the bill. Sorry, I think we forgot to say that.
Thank you so much, sir.
Good afternoon, senators of the committee, and thank you for letting me be here. My name is Morgan Winters. I'm the Chief Technical Officer and co-founder at Nomadic AI. We've been working over the past year and a half to model surrounding data concerning homelessness, mental health, and substance abuse, and the existing systems utilized to manage resource and manage efforts. We have found time and time again that in aggregate, that the positive desired effects of these resources are maximized when the experts on these issues are operating in close proximity, collaborating in solutions derived out of common and empirical data, a notion that we've found does not, unfortunately, reflect the current state of affairs in a majority of efforts. We believe directly that SB 2487 is a step in the right direction, having the potential to both provide the state as a whole to address these systemic issues and more optimally, and subsequently lead the nation on by example on how these solutions should be architected moving forward. We'd like to thank Senator Tim Parker for looking forward to working with you as well.
Thank you so much, sir.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Scott Ackerson. I'm a licensed master of social work, and I worked 10 years at Haven for Hope, both before the inception and helping it to stand up, and then did the program development. I left Haven, and I've been consulting since that time, replicating this project currently either standing up or working on in 9 cities across the United States. So I continue to consult in the area. I'm sure you're familiar with the Hearth Act of 2009. The Hearth Act really repurposed what used to be emergency shelter grant and instead made it only for permanent housing options, known as Housing First. While theoretically very good, Housing First falls short because if you don't have housing capacity and you don't have capacity for comprehensive social services, it doesn't work. You can't put people in the throes of addiction in an apartment by themselves and expect them to succeed. So while the rest of the United States was downsizing emergency shelter due to the federal cuts, San Antonio was the only city in the United States that invested $100 million to build an emergency shelter on steroids. I'm going to use my last minute to talk about the outcomes. First of all, the human outcomes. Over 18,000 people since inception have been housed with an 85 to 90% retention rate. Downtown homelessness has decreased 85 to 90%, which is great for economic development, and San Antonio is a hospitality city. And then on the economic side, from inception, Haven has annual savings of $148 million in benefits from reduced homelessness, $2.4 million in cost avoidance for public intoxication diversion, $1.8 million in cost avoidance to fire department EMS, $1.1 million in diversion from emergency room for those with mental illness, and cost-benefit analysis was conducted by a third-party economist. What that economist found that for every dollar that was invested in Haven for Hope, the community saw a $29 gain to the tune of $5.6 billion from inception to 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am?
Good morning. My name is Hannah Heimbaugh. I'm a licensed speech-language pathologist, a business owner, and a mother of 2, and I am testifying against Senate Bill 2487. Senate Bill 2487 would make it easier for psychiatric hospitals, crisis centers, and mental health professionals to hold people against their will. It would legitimize what happened to me. Last year, after being sexually harassed by a former business partner and going several nights without sleep, I had a panic attack. I wasn't suicidal. I wasn't a danger to anyone. I just needed rest. Following my therapist's advice, I went voluntarily to the ER for help. What I got instead was 6 days of confinement against my will at a psychiatric hospital. No court order, no hearing, no way to leave, and no rights. I hadn't been violent, I hadn't broken the law, but I lost my freedom simply because someone decided that I didn't know what was best for me. The psych hospital claimed they had filed a court order to hold me, but refused to show it. It took police to ask for the court order, and come to find out, they didn't actually have one. No one has held them accountable. I filed complaints with the state. I received a letter stating that the investigation was complete and that I could request the investigation report. I made an open records request, but oddly, I never got a response. Section 1 of the bill would allow any licensed mental health professional, not just doctors, to detain someone because they refuse treatment in that facility. That's what the psychiatric hospital did to me. I was threatened, I was coerced, and it was made clear to the police in front of me that if I exercised my rights to request discharge, that they would use my request to get a court order to hold me. In speaking to the police, we found out that they were constantly having to come out to assist people like me who were being held against their will. I have the body cam footage to prove it. No judge, no hearing, no due process.
Thank you so much. Are there questions of the panel? Senator Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, first of all, I'm very sorry for what you had experienced, and we'll take that to heart with regard to what we're doing here, so thank you for that. Yeah. And I want to thank the four of you for participating in all of our stakeholder groups on this issue all year long, your thoughtful testimony and being here as well. So thank you all very much.
Well, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you very much. The chair calls Guy Herman, Bess Braveda, Trevor Sorrells, Jamie Carruthers, and Sam Whiteside. Guy Herman, Bess Braveda, Trevor Sorrells, Jamie Carruthers, and Sam Whiteside. Judge Herman, please begin.
My name is Guy Herman. I'm the statutory probate court here in Travis County. I'm also the presiding statutory probate court judge in the state of Texas, elected by both Democratic and Republican statutory probate courts. We handle 72% or so of all mental commitments in the state of Texas. I am supportive of this bill. I've worked with Senator Parker, about this bill, how to make it better, and everything that we've had discussions on, he's been very helpful in responding to that. I'm a little disturbed what I just heard. If it happened in Travis County, I promise you I will investigate what happened, because that's not the way it's supposed to happen. I like the approach he's taking. We need to have some systems set up in these it's 5 counties, I think. It's going to apply to Harris, Dallas, Travis, Tarrant, and one more, which is Dallas. I thought I said Dallas. Well, anyway, it's 5 counties, and some of our judges, I will tell you, they would like to see the full committee substitute, because it's going to happen to them in 2 years or 4 years, whenever their counties get to be 1.3 million, which is, I think, is the number, and there may be 1.2, but they're not quite there yet. So I've committed to them that we would like to look at that. And as soon as we can see a committee substitute, we will certainly ship them to them. I've met some interesting people today from Harris County that has some ideas that I think are very helpful. And if I could get my phone computer to work, I would give them to you today, but I'm having a little bit of trouble getting the internet to work. But they'll be up here speaking, I think, in a few moments. And they have some very good ideas about how to approach this. And I would hope you would be open to the Harris County people when they come up here, because they'll be in the next panel.
Thank you, Judge. We'll continue from the left. Would you please testify?
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Certainly.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for wanting to get to the bottom of the line of what happened to that young woman that was here just a moment ago in Travis County. That was just horrific.
I didn't hear where she said she was from, but if it happened in Travis County, it's inappropriate what she said happened.
I thought you said Travis as well, but if you maybe connect with her when you're done, I'd like to find out what happened and get to the root cause of that. And thank you for your support of what we're trying to accomplish. And we'll certainly take the stakeholder feedback here as we wrap up, try to get the consensus the next day or two. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. My name is Trevor Sorrells, CEO and co-founder of Nomadic AI, and I'm here today to speak in support of SB 2487. Nomadic AI is a startup founded here in Austin in January of 2024 that utilizes recent advancements in technology to build a stronger data layer on top of existing homeless management information systems. Over the past year, we've collected and aggregated millions of data points in an effort to understand how homelessness affects surrounding communities and how service providers can better can better allocate their resources. In our research, we've looked into solutions that are working in other locales, in this case, San Antonio's Haven for Hope. Haven for Hope's no refusal single point of drop-off and co-location of services has played a massive role in addressing the homeless crisis in San Antonio, in stark contrast to other cities in Texas and around the nation where services remain spread out and uncoordinated. Building on that, through our data collection analysis, we found the allocation of government funds to continuums of care and subsequently the nonprofits underneath them are rarely spent in a meaningful way when the nonprofits lack a central source of communication. Austin is a great example of this, where homelessness tripled between 2021 and 2023 with a budget of $144 million compared to San Antonio's rise of 7% in the same period with a budget of $93 million. Much of this is due to the co-location and the coordination of those services. This bill would take solutions that have worked in Texas before and ensure that every county in Texas, and specifically the metros, receives the same benefits that San Antonio has. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am?
Good evening. My name is Vesper Veda. I'm speaking today to share my lived experience and express my opposition to Bill SB 2487. I was held in a facility under duress and threat of police intervention, despite not posing any immediate danger to myself or others. My symptoms and personal history were misconstrued and used against me. I was denied the right to advocate for myself and told any attempt to leave would be used against me by a judge and could result in a prolonged detainment. At no point was I informed of my legal rights, including the right to write a 4-hour letter when I asked. I was never given the opportunity to speak to a physician about these concerns. While in the facility, I experienced medical abuse. My prescribed medications were withheld, and my mobility aid was taken without the knowledge or consent of my doctor. Upon intake, I was held alone in a room during a panic attack with no access to help or staff. I was subjected to a degrading strip search and forced to squat and cough and unable to talk to anyone outside the hospital. After my release, I divorced an abusive partner and found myself without stable housing. I became temporarily homeless and stayed in various shelters. While these shelters attempted to offer support through programs, most were either inaccessible due to overwhelming demand, temporarily closed to the public, or had wait lists ranging from 6 months to over a year. Many women in these shelters were not suffering from diagnosed mental illnesses. Many were survivors of domestic abuse or simply fell on hard times. Many were also older, physically disabled, and living on extremely limited incomes like myself. The narrative that equates homelessness with mental illness is not only inaccurate, it is dangerous. This brings me to the bill under discussion today. The proposed legislation appears to group together people experiencing homelessness and those with mental illness in ways that are misleading and harmful, suggesting both groups are violent criminals who are a harm to themselves. It fails to address critical systematic issues such as long wait times for support programs, financial insecurity.
Thank you, ma'am. There will be questions. Mr. Carruthers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jamie Carruthers. I'm the Public Affairs Director for the Coalition for the Homeless, Houston-Harris County, and we support Senate Bill 2487 because if funded, it will create a local solution to provide care for severely mentally ill persons who have fallen into homelessness. It will make a profound impact on street homelessness. Severely mentally ill individuals experiencing chronic homelessness have little prospect for recovery at present. Most have repeatedly refused all services, including housing. As a result, the severely mentally ill homeless languish on the street and are in continual danger. In Houston-Harris County, we know these individuals well. We care about them, and we perform continual outreach to them, but we cannot force them to accept help or treatment. Due to repeated interaction with first responders, these individuals strain resources and are a continual source of citizen complaints through no fault of their own. Senate Bill 2487 provides a place for them to be brought to begin their treatment journey so that housing and other services can be utilized towards their benefit once they are stabilized. As stated, we support 2487, and we are deeply grateful to Senator Parker and his staff's diligence and thoroughness regarding the subject matter. Homeless service providers, local governments, citizens, and continuums of care all had input on the bill and had their needs and concerns addressed. And I doubt that any office has a better grasp on the homeless response system as it exists in the state of Texas than Senator Parker's, and that is due to their monumental work and research. 2487 is the fruit of all that hard work, and as we stated, we want it to pass if an appropriation can be made or funding secured, as we do not want an unfunded mandate placed on the counties. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of the panel? Thank you very much. Senator Parker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I appreciate all of you being here. Thank you very much. Thank you for your participation in our work this year as well. The two of you, ma'am, I'm so sorry for all you've experienced, and I want to let you know that the intention of what we're trying to do is very different from what you experienced. And we'll take the bad experience you had and make that a charge to keep, to make certain that we address those issues in the implementation of this program. Thank you for being here.
Other questions? Thank you to the panel. Chair calls David Gray, Jesse Moreno, Lee Spiller, Charles Reed, and Ann Howard. David Gray, Jesse Moreno, Lee Spiller, Charles Reed, Ann Howard. Please begin, since you're the first seated, sir. Please begin.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is David Gray. I serve as the Homeless Strategy Officer for the City of Austin. Mayor Kirk Watson sends his regards to all of you. I'm here today on behalf of the City of Austin to offer our strong support for Senate Bill 2487. I want to begin by thanking Senator Parker and his great staff for intentionally bringing partners from different backgrounds and perspectives together over the last year in an effort to put forth a bill that would truly benefit our statewide, our homeless response system. This bill is informed by those efforts, and I'm grateful, Mr. Senator, for your careful consideration of the feedback invited by all parties. This bill would establish urgently needed crisis service centers, facilities where individuals experiencing mental health emergencies can receive timely and specialized care outside of jails and emergency rooms. For individuals who are unsheltered and in the midst of a crisis, this legislation offers a pathway to recovery and to stability, something too often lacking in our existing homeless response systems for individuals with mental health disorders. The City of Austin appreciates Senator Parker's consideration of a few amendments that we offered. These include returning the physician evaluation times back to 12 hours to ensure faster clinical decisions for individuals in crisis, changing the language to ensure that upon release, an individual receives a formal referral, not just information, to out-based community-based services, expanding the applicability of Chapter 580 to include municipalities, establishing a funding eligibility threshold for cities over 900,000 people, and authorizing municipalities to submit plans for funding of the centers. And lastly, adjusting the composition of the Crisis Service Center Advisory Board to include representation from municipalities and emergency medical service providers. Again, on behalf of the City of Austin and Mayor Kirk Watson and my team, thank you, Senator Parker, for the great work you've done over the last year. We happily support this bill.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. My name is Charles Reed, Assistant County Administrator with Dallas County. I'm here to testify on the bill. We support providing homelessness services. We have partnerships with many local organizations to do just that. We have provided several suggested amendments on behalf of Dallas County, and then a couple of other counties have submitted to make this bill better, in our opinion. One is that the population bracket that's currently in the bill, it seems to consolidate the entire homelessness response for the state of Texas into 5 counties. It makes us very nervous. We would hope that we could expand that out a little bit, especially in DFW, where you have 2 counties that are Tarrant and Dallas that are part of the current bracket, that have 2 more, what I would consider urban counties just north of us, who also have sizable homelessness populations. We would hate to see Dallas and Tarrant, well, specifically Dallas County, bear the burden of providing those services for the entire region. I understand that there's some appropriations being talked about that may alleviate some of the concerns. We'd also respectfully request that a provision be added in that the enactment or that the counties do not have to implement the act without state appropriation. It's a courtesy y'all give to state agencies pretty regularly. We're just asked for the same courtesy. For Dallas County specifically, we already subsidize many services for our surrounding counties. As an example, many Collin County residents come to Dallas County for indigent health care. We don't want to exacerbate that same burden from us to other counties, at least for our taxpayers. Excuse me. We also recommended that the funds that potentially be donated to the commission just automatically be sent down to the counties that are implementing this. It doesn't seem to me to make sense for the commission that doesn't have a role in implementing to have those funds. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am?
Thank you, Dean, Senator Zaffarini. It's nice to be here. Thank you, Senator Parker, for working with all of my friends and constituents on this bill. My name's Ann Howard. I'm a Travis County Commissioner. I represent the University of Texas and West Campus. I represent downtown Austin and parts out, the rural parts, all the way to Burnett County. 10 years prior to becoming a Travis County Commissioner, I was working on homelessness with my colleagues, not only across Austin and Travis County, but really across the country, looking at what do we do? I really liked listening to you. I heard the words urgency, actionable, compassionate, and then not a one-size-fits-all situation. And so I appreciate, too, you listening to the Travis County comments about the models, and we are all learning a lot from each other and wanting to make it work here in our community. Travis County contributed $110 million of the federal ARPA money to help build more supportive housing. And we know from working with the city for years on this issue that we have to work together. I want you to know our business community, our philanthropic community, we wouldn't have supportive housing and shelters with supplies and all without the support of the philanthropic community. So without a new funding stream, to have new requirements just doesn't really make sense. The continuum of care funding and all of the rules and regs from HUD, they've been pretty good over the last 20 years, making changes. But now we're concerned about the loss or pause of federal funding. And so I think we're going to have to take care of these very vulnerable people and end the cycling of jail and hospital and shelter. It's very expensive for our communities. And so the help you can give us, we can do something good with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Sir?
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Lee Spiller. I'm with the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, and we're testifying against the bill. The first red flag in the bill was the idea that someone could initiate a detention on someone that arrives at a facility. That's a huge word, and it encompasses many things, not just a crisis center. The problem we've had over the last several years is people showing up at psychiatric hospitals, sometimes only to inquire about outpatient services and then being held against their will. The ease with which a person can apply for detention scares me. We had a case in the Houston area where a lady and her husband went to check on outpatient. They didn't feel like it was a good fit, and they let them know. The lady said, well, let me make a few calls. She leaves, and according to this woman, 20 minutes later, she comes back, and she and her husband get up to leave, and they, well, thank you, yeah, this just wasn't for us. And the lady goes, no, you can't leave. We have an emergency apprehension warrant. That's no joke. This was one of way too many cases. We've got to narrow the bill so that we don't make people who are simply seeking care vulnerable. Wherever possible, it needs to be voluntary. Bringing the rejection of voluntary mental health services into the criteria for detention means that if you attempt to exercise a fundamental right, you could get detained for that. Of course, detention wouldn't happen to somebody who's voluntary, right? But people do have a right to informed consent. The criteria for dangerousness, for detention really needs to be around dangerousness. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's really what you're wanting to do. You're not wanting to detain non-dangerous individuals who are capable of surviving in the community. So the wording needs to be tightened up. There's more data in the written testimony, and I think you'll find it helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Senator Perry?
So Lee, we all know what we're trying to hit. We've got those people that don't have the capacity to really take care of themselves. But there's a take care of themselves, and then there's the danger to themselves or danger to someone else. Is that a fair statement? There's really three-legged stool here.
Yeah, there's three legs, but actually that gravely disabled leg should still be tied to danger. Otherwise, it's just a judgment call.
Well, and that's where I'm going. So, and not being here for the first part of the layout, but I'm envisioning this bill kind of is intended for all three of the three-legged stool, correct?
That's probably is. I couldn't tell from the wording of the bill.
So what do you do with that person today that has nobody to commit them? They're not a danger, they're just not well. And most of them end up in the criminal justice system at some point, but not all of them do. Some of them are very content just living under an overpass or wherever that may be. So my interaction with the homeless, we have had a ministry in Lubbock, and temperature got to a certain point, the homeless has had a shelter. You stay in there. After a few times of chaperoning them all night, it's 100 people. I made an observation, and I just asked, can you get me 10 people that can pass a drug test that would be willing to go through a CNA certification? Because I have an employer that would be more than happy to employ. Not only that, they had subsidized rental at the end of that process. Out of the 10, they found 2 of them actually started to work, and with that one paycheck, they were gone. And one of them found me one day and said, appreciate the heart, but we like our lifestyle. Now, they weren't as severe as some of the folks, obviously, that we're looking at. So that was an awakening to me that the challenge with working with the homeless is you have to separate the ones that want to be different and those that don't. There's some that don't want the help.
Right.
But that's the complication. But I would say, my opinion is with yours, probably more often than not, but then we hear time and time in this community that we do have those people that need to be there because they do go to the criminal justice system. They haven't hurt anybody, but they're ending up in jail. So
It's rough because every system has to work in balance. You know, whether it's the jail system, like the incompetency, we've got problems there. Jail diversion, you could have problems there. They all interact. At the end of the day, if somebody hasn't committed a crime, they don't belong in jail. If they have committed a crime, they've got to be introduced to the criminal justice system, right? Even if they get diverted later.
Yep.
That's just...
So how do you address the one that's not hurt themselves or hurt somebody else that truly is just out there existing? Do you
If they're not hurting themselves or others and they just want to be out there,
just leave them alone?
what else are you going to do? Now, I did like the continuum of care section of the bill.
Right.
You know, a broad array of voluntary services makes sense. And hopefully, you know, because my question is, how many of these people are rejecting help because they've been betrayed before? Right? There's a certain amount of trust that has to be gained before you can really work with somebody.
It's a challenge because we assume those people in those situations are unhappy or not cared for, but in their world, they're fine. And I think that's a challenge is to you speak to, and it's an important one to how you find that balance. But
it's really fine, and I really admire every member of this committee for exploring this issue because, boy, in recent years, it's been tough. You know, the lifting of the camping ban here in Austin completely changed what we were dealing with. So, yeah, I appreciate your attention to this.
Thank you, sir. Other questions? Thank you to the panel. The chair calls Angela Ott, Onyinye Akujo, Adam Haynes, Sonia Burns, and Mark Escott.
There we go. Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Onyinye Akujo, and I'm the president and CEO of the Metroplex Civic Business Association of the DFW. We're an organization dedicated to fostering economic growth and civic improvement across the Dallas-Fort Worth region. This bill represents a critical step towards addressing the persistent and escalating issue of homelessness that has presented ongoing challenges for our local governments. It's time to address this in a meaningful way. The model proposed by SB 2487 is not theoretical. It has been tested and proven successful by organizations like Haven for Hope in San Antonio. Here are some statistical points from Haven for Hope's official report that illustrates the effectiveness of this model. First, client reach. According to Haven for Hope's FY23 impact report, they had served 9,457 clients, the highest number of clients served since opening in 2010. Also from that report, you will find that a large percentage of clients who exit Haven for Hope do not return to homeless services. For example, 79% of clients exiting Haven for Hope during FY22 did not return to homeless services within the community for the following year. This type of centralized model, as demonstrated by Haven for Hope, has shown to reduce the strain on local emergency services and also reduce the amount of unsheltered individuals in the surrounding areas. For businesses in large cities like Dallas, this bill offers significant advantages. First, reduced liability. By providing a designated and managed point of service, it helps mitigate potential liability issues that businesses face due to interactions with the unsheltered population. 2, improve public services and spaces. A centralized approach leads to cleaner and safer public spaces, enhancing the overall environment for businesses, employees, and customers. And lastly, economic stability. By addressing the root causes of homelessness, this bill contributes to a more stable and predictable economic environment. We know the model works. Unfortunately, there has been resistance to adopt similar models, and we feel that this bill is necessary to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
All right.
Introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Angela Ott. I am testifying on the bill on behalf of Disability Rights Texas. So I want to speak to some technical concerns with the bill as written. I don't think it's the intention of the bill, but I just wanted to point out some concerns we noted. So as written, this new initial examination could significantly alter the current timeline for emergency detentions. As written, the initial examination occurs immediately upon arrival, but there is no listed definition for immediately, which means every facility could derive a different interpretation of that time frame. For this reason, we recommend immediately be changed to within 30 minutes of presenting to the Crisis Service Center, an initial exam shall be completed. Second, while we know that the intent is that this initial examination will only be used in these new crisis service centers, this change in code will, as written, apply to any facility that can conduct an emergency detention under 573. So that's state hospitals, private psychiatric facilities, emergency rooms, and in emergency cases, jails or similar detention facilities. So to align with the bill's intended purpose, we recommend that facility be defined as crisis service center. After this initial exam at the Crisis Service Center has been completed, the language does not specify when the facility must make a decision based on the results of the initial exam. If we add this clarification on immediately, as suggested above, it would resolve this inconsistency. In light of recent multi-million-dollar fraud and abuse cases within private psychiatric chains, where facilities kept patients longer than medically necessary, the current lack of clarity could exacerbate fraudulent practices. In Section 580 and subsection D, the Crisis Service Center has 72 hours between the initial examination and the provided follow-up services. I assume the intent is that it's just follow-up within 72 hours, but currently it's unclear if these facilities will be detaining people for those 72 hours, and if so, how these facilities will be able to hold someone for 72 hours. Oh, I'm up. Would you like me to finish, or I'm done?
You can finish that thought. Go ahead, thanks.
Again, under Texas law, emergency detention does not permit the hospital or provider to treat the person against their will.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Mark S. Scott. I serve as the Chief Medical Officer and EMS System Medical Director for the City of Austin. Appreciate the opportunity to speak about this bill. And thank you, Senator Parker, for its introduction. I'm a board-certified physician in emergency medicine, EMS. I oversee the EMS system for the City of Austin, which includes the EMS department and the Austin Fire Department. We respond to an awful lot of calls for individuals that are going to be impacted by this bill. One of the challenges we have as a city, as a jurisdiction, is that it's incredibly expensive for us to respond. Ambulances cost about $1,350 per call. Fire truck, if they're added to, another $2,000, $2,500. So there's a huge amount of taxpayer support for the current system, which ends up being a revolving door because there is no place for them to go to take care of what they need. They need emergency intervention, they need stabilization, they need connection to resources so that we can stop this repetitive cycle of calls to emergency services, which sometimes are multiple times every single day for the same person. I think the evidence is clear that multidisciplinary teams are the answer to that. We are doing so in the city of Austin. But recognize that some of the elements of the bill, which adds additional individuals who can perform emergency detentions, is based on evidence. The evidence shows us that approximately 2/3 of individuals detained by law enforcement end up being released and they don't need to be detained for further care. The reverse is true for mental health physicians and clinicians, and that 2/3 of them need to stay. So this hits on what we need, and that is medical professionals making a medical diagnosis and utilizing law enforcement only where needed to do the enforcement piece. So thank you again.
And thank you, Doctor. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Okay, hi, I'm Sonia Burns, and I encourage you all to please ask me questions. Thank you for this bill. I'm on it, and I'm just going to say that I think that the goal should be a more robust data collection because we're not going to get to where we want exactly with this bill. So here are some things. Senator Perry had a really great bill last session, SB 1677, included a state auditor's report on competency restoration services. 10% of the people we put on that list in a 5-year period reappeared multiple times with new charges. Travis County was second only to Dallas in the number of people that went around and around. Anybody doing this work knows that this group needs a higher level of care. So the bill is pointing to, I'm going to go here and now I'm going to be connected to services, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing. It's not appropriate for too many people, and we need to create other models, residential models of care. We need to collect the data. Hospitals, when they discharge to the streets, if you look at it, it usually says discharge to home. If I'm in charge of solving a homelessness crisis, I need to know where did they go. Permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing. I have so many people who are kicked out. We actually pay people. A lot of these organizations will hand money to people. It's a known pattern of practice. They're going to be evicted anyway, so I'm going to give you $1,000. And then what? I need to account for that. Incompetent to stand trial, unlikely to restore in the jail, in the community. I'm too acute to voluntarily engage, but I'm not acute enough for inpatient because I'm at baseline. You see this all the time. We have to collect that data. Haven for Hope, it's a good model, but they kick out a lot of people. You can look up the story on Jessica Witzel. She died in the streets of San Antonio. She had been refused entry at Haven for Hope because she couldn't conform to the behaviors that you had to have. SB 26 last session, it was about the LMHAs collecting data. One of the data points we wanted was refusal to engage. We drop people from services. Please ask me questions. There are a couple more data points I really think you should know about.
And thanks for your testimony. Senator Parker, you have the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you all testifying. Appreciate all the panels testifying. And I appreciate your commentary specific to data. And I have a separate filed bill in this package addressing homelessness that we've been working on with stakeholders during the year, and it's Senate Bill 2488. So I think a number of the items that you've talked about are addressed in that piece of legislation. So, but would love your feedback on that and everything else. And then beyond that, I want to also comment, ma'am, I think it was Angela, on your comment about the definition of immediately. I did comment on that on my layout, that we are being more specific to that. We're taking all the feedback from all the stakeholders, and we will work to finalize what we're doing here the next 24 to 48 hours. I made a couple other notes as well, just to make sure I recap everyone properly on this for, I think, everyone's benefit. I want to stress that the term facility will be clarified in the sub, specifically just applies exclusively to these crisis service centers. So I want that to be very clear for everyone that's asking. And again, I want to remind everyone that the focus here is about substantial risk to self or others, which is what we're obviously modifying with this piece of legislation. Fundamentally, and I want my colleagues, Senator Perry, and appreciate his thoughtful comments earlier, you know, I just fundamentally believe, and I know you agree with me, Senator Perry, that it is not the right thing to do morally for people of faith to allow a human being who is battling such horrific mental crises to allow them to die in their feces on the street. I just don't think that's right. And that's the whole reason why we've worked this year to put together all these stakeholders to address this issue in a thoughtful way, realizing there's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and trying to do this in a thoughtful way. So I appreciate your comment very much, and I appreciate the participation of everyone, and look forward to your continued feedback. Certainly, Senator Perry can ask you a question if you'd like, and you're happy to give you another opportunity to comment further if you'd like.
And some of you have heard me say this, but I want to just drive this home. I'm so sick that I'm on Medicaid, and now I am dual eligible. I could be 26 years old. I'm on Medicare. We know under Medicaid, we have the IMD exclusion. I cannot stay in a psychiatric facility of 16 or more beds for more than 15 days, consecutive days per month. This is clearly impacting, right, our streets and our jails, because I need that longer length of stay. Now, we have the IMD waiver where that would be extended. The state could apply, and it would be up to 60 days. However, when Senator Perry, who carried that last session, when they asked me this year, we should carry the IMD waiver, I was a little reluctant, actually, because our private psychiatric beds have the opposite story of, we know that when you have insurance, I'm keeping you longer, but I get calls from inside the house all the time. We're treating the homeless people terribly, and we just toss them back to the streets. So I don't want to give you a payer source unless I know you're committed to an outcome, a better outcome for a person. But what I want to say too is under Medicare, it is a lifetime limit of 190 days of inpatient psychiatric treatment. This is unbelievable. This is something that must change at the federal level, because it doesn't matter what size anymore. Now I'm done, and we need to be collecting that data on all of these people that are in the jails, in the streets, cycling through, because what I really think is gonna happen is that once the federal government hears from all the states, we then say, I don't know that it's gonna be a benefit for care as much as a subsidy for a different kind of housing. And I think it's really, really important to keep talking about that, because I know that you all see them. And the hospitals know it. They literally have to tell you every day how many days you have left. So it's a data point that no state has been collecting, but it's huge. And if that's who we've left in the streets, someone I identified as higher needs, and I left you unfunded, we're responsible for that.
Thank you for that very much. And look, I think we're all in agreement at this table about the enormity of the challenges that we face. We're trying to take a slice at a time and do something meaningful. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. Again, my data bill 2488, I think you'll find to be of value. And the other thing I want to say is this, because I agree with your commentary. We are very blessed to have a great Housing and Urban Development Secretary in Scott Turner, who's a good friend of many of us in this body, and will be in discussion around a pilot program on some of these things that we can get federal support with regard to data collection here on these topics, so we can be more effective in what we do. So again, appreciate you being here, appreciate everyone. Thank you very much.
Senators, any other questions for these witnesses? Very well, you're excused. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your testimony. Chair calls Adam Haynes. Aaron Harris. I see Mr. Harris is here. We're looking for Adam Haynes, Aaron Harris, and is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 2487? Mr. Harris is the last witness we have registered, so if anyone else wishes to, please make your way to the table now so we can hear from you. Welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the community. My name is Aaron Harris, and I'm here to support this bill. I want to thank Senator Parker for the immense amount of work that you and your office have done in the interim, hosting these roundtables. And it's been mentioned a couple times, but people need to really appreciate the amount of work that went into that, days and days on end for these roundtables. Everybody here knows that the issue has become untenable. Whether you walk out of this building in any direction or try to go to Dallas City Hall, you're certain to see the results of the failed policies regarding the homeless population. During the roundtables, attended by representatives of every large city, NGOs, and various nonprofits, it was clear that the industry is chaotic at best. Most attendees are not incentivized to fix the problem, rather protect their funding by what I call touching the problem. They are paid by contacts made, not fixing the problem. One thing is clear, there are no structural incentives to fix the problem. Yet over and over again, everyone points to Haven for Hope in San Antonio as the only model that is working. No alternatives were ever brought to light in hours and hours of roundtable. Changing the model in these cities challenges certain NGOs' revenue streams and potentially city staff with their jobs. However, good policy is not driven by challenges to revenue streams which are taxpayer generated to begin with. That is why this body must act. The model works. It has for 19 years. While this is a Republican authored bill, Democrats.org actually lists this as one of their priorities and mentions Haven by name. This should be non-controversial. I urge you to act in unison and pass this bill. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mr. Harris. Members, any questions for the witness? Very well, thanks for being here. And tell me your name.
My name is Sam Whiteside, and I signed up but failed to come up here when my name was called earlier.
Oh, very good. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senators, and thank you especially, Senator Parker. These roundtables have been exemplary, and as evidence from all the testimonies today, it's neat to see in the bill that you found a common ground in a space that's very difficult to do that. And as I look at the language in the bill, some things that will be helpful to get right, as Sonia recently mentioned, the data component, which I look forward to seeing 24 to 88. And then to speak more broadly about Haven for Hope and some of the things that have worked well there, there's an outdoor shelter there. So when someone's brought to Haven for Hope, they are able to be checked into an outdoor area where they can stay and sleep and remain, but they're not forced to go into the programs. And as Scott was talking earlier about the 85% reduction in street homelessness, that Haven for Hope was able to have such a large capacity to bring people in, allowed them to provide certainty to the first responders that if you bring someone to our shelter, we'll be able to take them in and have them for the night and potentially longer. And another thing that the outdoor shelter allowed was for the individuals to opt in to taking the next step in treatment. And I think that's a central piece of this. And you really did a great job of getting something that we could all agree on. And I look forward to seeing how you continue to advance it.
Thanks for your testimony. Senator Parker.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank you both for being here today and your testimony. I want to thank everyone for the thoughtful testimony. And anyone that's listening and paying attention, please know that if there's a stakeholder issue that is yet to be addressed, that you have a pressing concern on, please come see my staff and myself. We look forward to wrapping up the next couple of days, but we're really trying to take a meaningful step forward here to address the issue this session, and couldn't be more grateful to both of you for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any more questions, members? Thank you, Mr. Harris. Ms. Whiteside, you're excused. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 2487? Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed. Bill's left pending at this time. The chair lays out Senate Bill 2284, and recognizes its author, our colleague, Senator Hinojosa, to explain the measure.
Thank you, Chairman Hughes, members of the committee, for the opportunity to lay out Senate Bill 2284. This bill aims to clarify the language regarding municipalities, counties, and their ordinances related to hunting equipment. This bill adds a definition for archery equipment, which includes a longbow, recurve bow, compound bow, or crossbow, as well as an arrow and any component or accessory of an arrow, bow, or crossbow. It is the intent of this legislation to add archery equipment to the standing exemptions we have in place regarding firearms, knives, air rifles, and other sporting equipment when it comes to possession, travel, and commerce. This bill also clarifies the language that remained when the legislature enacted constitutional carry by removing firearms from the list of items that municipalities and counties can ban or otherwise regulate. By incorporating clarifying language for archery equipment and ensuring uniform firearm laws throughout the state, we will establish a clear and concise framework that the men and women of our state can follow without the fear of violating a city ordinance that contradicts the spirit of the law we, as the legislature, have enacted. I look forward to any questions you may have, and we have a resource witness.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any questions for our colleague on Senate Bill 2284? Very well, we'll open public testimony, and the chair calls Noe Perez. Ms. Perez, welcome. Make yourself comfortable there. Once you get situated, introduce yourself and give us your testimony. Glad you're here.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. My name is Noe Perez, and I represent myself. I strongly support Senate Bill 2284. I wrote and then suggested this bill to my state representative, Ms. Lopez, to protect archery equipment and to make other mandatory changes. I thank my district senator, Mr. Adam Hinojosa, for his willingness to author this companion bill. This bill came about because of my interest in protecting archery hunting for my adult sons and for future generations. This bill will protect archers by ensuring due process of law, a crucial component in our system of jurisprudence by making archery laws uniform throughout Texas. It reduces the acreage requirements from 10 to 7 acres because arrows discharged have significantly less foot-pounds of energy than that discharged from a shotgun or other firearm. The municipal preemption law was amended, as noted earlier, in 2021 to prescribe the regulation of the use of firearms. So this Senate Bill 2284 simply amends and clarifies Chapter 342 of the Local Government Code to conform to that 2021 law. Senate Bill 2284 also reasserts the effect of House Floor Amendment Number 1 by former Representative Ron Wilson to his concealed handgun bill back from 1995, which clearly prescribed the municipal regulation of the carrying of firearms by handgun license holders. Would note, however, that there's no change that Subdivision 6, which still allows cities under 411.209 to regulate firearms from license holders, so that doesn't change. This bill is consistent with our state's tradition of the application of Dillon's rule. Several municipalities have adopted archery regulations, and currently there's nothing to prevent local governments from further restricting the possession, transportation, storage, carrying, or use of archery equipment in the future. So this bill is needed. Just preliminary research, I've got a list here, a short list of 19 cities which have done that. If it's acceptable to the chairman, I would love to pass these out so y'all can see this. Or to the committee clerk if there's one, if it's possible.
Oh, yes, sir. We'll sure get that from you. The gentleman just to your right.
And if you look at this list here, I won't read the entire list, but it is a real ongoing problem. It's just a preliminary search that I did you could do on Muni Code. I came up with 19 cities. The ones that are emboldened there, like, for example, my hometown of Laguna Vista, Corpus Christi, Alice, Bay City, Texarkana, Grapevine, Flower Mound, Palestine. There's several others out there. And what they're doing is some of these are innocuous discharge. That's fine. This will not change that. So what's going on with archery equipment, cities can still regulate archery equipment like they can firearms. So we're not rocking the boat there. But it does provide that due process protection because the term possess is so broad under Black's law code that would encompass even what's in a vehicle. If someone's parked adjacent to a public park, for example. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I respectfully request this committee favorably report Senate Bill 2284 with the recommendation that do pass and be printed. So I respectfully request that as a citizen, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony. That's right. Senator, any questions for Mr. Perez? Thanks for being here. Your representative and your senator are taking care of you on this.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else present wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 2284? Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed. Bills left pending at this time.
The chair lays out Senate Bill 2877 and recognizes Chairman Hughes to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. During the second call session of the 87th Legislature, the House, you may recall, amended Senate Bill 1 to change illegal voting from a second-degree felony to a Class A misdemeanor. It's been a felony for almost 50 years, and 2877 refers this offense to second-degree felony. In addition to returning violations to second-degree felony, it adds counting votes that are invalid, altering reports to include votes the person knows are invalid, and refusing to count valid votes to the list of election crimes. It also raised the punishment for elected officials who commit any one of these crimes from a state jail felony to a felony of the first degree. And finally, it raises attempts to commit any of these crimes to a felony of the third degree instead of a Class B misdemeanor. Election fraud is a direct assault on our system of government, and we shouldn't tolerate it. And this bill returns the punishment for these crimes to their original status and sends the message that we have zero tolerance for election fraud. And I'll yield for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any questions for the author? Seeing none, the chair opens public testimony and calls Dr. Laura Presley. Okay. Looks like Dr. Presley is not with us now. So is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 2877? Hearing none, the bill will be left pending.
Thank you. Senators, while we're here, there's some pending business before us to consider. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business Senate Bill 1065, Senator Hall's bill about government entity contracts and carrying of handguns by license holders, Senate Bill 1065. Senator Hall moves that Senate Bill 1065 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. 1065. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwertner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. There being 6 ayes and 1 nay, Senate Bill 1065 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business Senate Bill 2117, Senator Parker's bill on the Texas Committee on Foreign Investment to review transactions with certain foreign entities. And there's a committee substitute, which Senator Parker sends up, and Senator Parker is recognized to explain the substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you with the committee substitute for Senate Bill 2117, which incorporates several pieces of stakeholder feedback. The substitute clarifies that covered transactions do not include security interests, as companies have no control over who buys their bonds. Additionally, the substitute clarifies provisions surrounding exemptions for nations with trade agreements with the United States.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any questions for our colleague on the substitute? Without objection, the substitute is adopted. Senator Parker moves that Senate Bill 2117 as substituted be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. 2117. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwertner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. There being 7 ayes and no nays, Senate Bill 2117 as substitute will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Senator Parker moves that Senate Bill 2117 as substituted be certified and recommended for the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business Senate Bill 2533. Senate Bill 2533, Senator Middleton's bill about accreditation of law schools. He has previously laid out a committee substitute. And is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute for Senate Bill 2533? Hearing none, the substitute's adopted. Senator Parker moves that Senate Bill 2533 as substituted be reported favorably to the full Senate with a recommendation that it do pass and be printed. 2533, will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwertner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. There being 6 ayes and 1 nay, Senate Bill 2533 as substituted will be reported favorably to the full Senate. As a matter of pending business, the chair lays out Senate Bill 2743. Senator Hagan Boo's bill about election offenses, 2743. He has previously explained to us the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the substitute previously explained to the committee? Hearing none, the substitute's adopted. Senator Perry moves that Senate Bill 2743 as substituted be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. 2743, will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwertner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
There being 6 ayes and 1 nay, Senate Bill 2743 as substituted will be reported favorably to the full Senate. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business Senate Bill 3013, Senator Creighton's bill about financial disclosures. There's a committee substitute. Senator Creighton has previously explained to us, and it's been laid out. Is there objection to adoption of the substitute? Hearing none, substitute's adopted. Senator Parker moves that Senate Bill 3013 as substituted be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. 3013, will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwertner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. There being 6 ayes and 1 nay, Senate Bill 3013 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. As a matter of pending business, the chair now lays out Senate Bill 3014, Senator Creighton's bill about penalties assessed by the Ethics Commission. There is a committee substitute which has been already laid out before the committee. Is there objection to the adoption of the substitute? Hearing none, the substitute is adopted and now before us. Senator Parker moves that Senate Bill 3014 as substituted be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. 3014, will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwertner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. There being 6 ayes and 1 nay, Senate Bill 3014 as substituted will be reported favorably to the full Senate.
The chair lays out as a matter of pending business Senate Bill 2881. Senate Bill 2881 by Senator Hughes, default account settings for minors. Senator Hughes moves that we report it favorably to the whole Senate. The clerk will call the roll.
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwertner, Zaffarini, Paxton,
Aye.
Hughes.
Aye.
There being 7 ayes and 0 nays, Senate Bill 2881 will be reported favorably to the whole Senate.
Thank you, Dave.
That's it. Do you want that to go to local? Sure. Senator Hall moves that the Senate Bill 2881 be recommended certified for the placement on the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. Chair lays out as a matter of pending business Senate Bill 2964 by Senator Hughes relating to an opportunity to correct certain defects in an early voting ballot voted by mail. Senator Hughes moves that we report Senate Bill 2964 favorably to the whole Senate. The clerk will call the roll.
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwertner, Zaffarini? Paxton?
Aye.
Hughes?
There being 7 ayes and no nays, Senate Bill 2964 will be reported favorably, the whole Senate. Senator Hinojosa, Adam Hinojosa, that is, moves that Senate Bill 2964 be recommended and certified for placement on the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank each member. I know it's been a long day, and there's miles before we sleep. So with great thanks to our committee staff, individual member staffs, every witness for and against, and the folks working here even after we leave, with great thanks. If there's no other business to come before the Committee on State Affairs stands in recess subject to the call of the chair. Good evening.